Chapter 117. The coach of Princess Ying Chuan left the courtyard. After all, she was the princess of the Lu kingdom. Naturally, she could not be compared with the monarch of a great kingdom like Taba Ao. Princess Ying Chuan's coach was kept in a very low profile. It was just an ordinary double-wheeled coach, painted with a lacquer. 4 guards were stationed beside the coach, and apart from Princess Ying Chuan, there were only 2 serving ladies in the coach. A coach like this looked rather shabby in G City, extremely inconspicuous. After leaving the mansion, the coach took a few rounds around the inner second city of G City. After passing through a few streets and alleys, the coach went through the main road and exited the city gate. It took another round around the 3 inner cities, and finally came to the inner first city through a city gate on the east. Along the way, Wu Qi, who had been following behind the coach, could not help but shake his head. Compared to Taba Ao, Princess Ying Chuan's experience was far behind. In order to get rid of the spies, she had purposely taken so many detours along the way, and tried her best to travel along those deserted streets. However, when such a shabby coach was roaming around in the inner city, it would actually attract more attention. Wu Qi did not pay much attention to the chariots, but when Princess Ying Chuan's chariot went straight into the inner city, which was the inner city that was right next to the imperial city, Wu Qi was taken aback by what he saw. Those who lived in the inner city were the core members of Great Yan Dynasty's imperial clan, such as the 8 princes, or the members of imperial clan who had a higher seniority than the 8 princes. Could it be that Princess Ying Chuan had some kind of relationship with these core members of imperial clan? The coach traveled along the Green Swallow Avenue in the inner city for a few miles from east to west, then turned into a side street called Green Cloud Alley. Princess Ying Chuan's coach came to a halt. It was extremely difficult to follow Princess Ying Chuan in the inner city. Not to mention the city guards along the way, there were dozens of sky patrolling eagle guards flying in the sky, constantly monitoring any movement on the ground. Many personal guards of imperial clan in the inner city were also coming and going from time to time. Even if there was an unfamiliar person on the street, it would be questioned by these people. Eventually, Wu Qi was forced to exercise the escape art of earth and follow behind Princess Ying Chuan's coach. He also noticed that there was a small shield emblem on Princess Ying Chuan's coach. The city guards along the way also saw this emblem, so they didn't stop her carriage. Otherwise, with her shabby carriage, how could she enter the inner city? The place where Princess Ying Chuan's coach stopped was the side entrance of a mansion. It was at least 1.5 miles away from the south side entrance. The area of this mansion was extremely large, much larger than Yu Xian's mansion. Wu Qi hid underground. His divine sense penetrated the ground and swept a glance at a vertical board on the left side of the side door. The vertical board was only about a foot long and had 3 small golden characters engraved on it. Prince Ren's Mansion. The Prince of Ren, Yan Xianchen, was one of the 8 princes of Great Yan Dynasty. Like Yan Helua, he was also Yan Dan's great-grandson. However, Yan Xianchen was much older than Yan He. He was the most experienced one among the 8 princes of Great Yan Dynasty. He had been sitting on the throne of Prince Ren for 500 years, and his cultivation base had reached the realm of Jin Dan. He was the prince with the highest prestige among all the 8 princes. Although Imperial Grandmaster Yan Yuxian was 1 generation younger than Yan Dan's grandson, when it came to age, the Prince of Ren, Yan Xianchen, was the oldest among all the 8 princes. He had been working in Great Yan Dynasty for several hundred years. Apart from the crown prince, Yan Qijuan, who had always surpassed him, Yan Qijuan was basically the man with the greatest power in Great Yan Imperial Court, apart from Yan Dan and Yan Qijuan. Only when the other few princes of Great Yan Dynasty joined forces could they contend against Yan Xianchen. Among the 3 prime ministers and 9 ministers of Great Yan Dynasty, apart from the Prime Minister Gao Jianli, who served Yan Dan for a long time, the other 2 prime ministers, the Minister of Justice, and a few other important ministers of Great Yan Dynasty were all disciples of Yan Xianchen. After several hundred years of entanglement of interests, the power held by Yan Xianchen, the Prince of Ren, was simply beyond the imagination of ordinary people. Wu Qi unleashed his divine sense and scanned the 3 gold-plated characters of Prince Ren's mansion in a daze. He was right. this was Prince Ren's mansion. Princess Ying Chuan and Yan Xianchen were friends? Or was she just in contact with someone in his mansion? Wu Qi had no idea what Qin Qingshui had told Princess Ying Chuan, asking her to look for the Duke of Yanxing, Yu Xian. But to his surprise, she went straight for the Prince of Ren, Yan Xianchen. This gave Wu Qi a great shock. Since the person she was looking for was Yan Xianchen, why was she taking a stroll in the inner city just now? Was she playing a trick on him? The curtain of the coach fluttered, and Princess Ying Chuan came out from it. She held her head high up, and with the help of two serving ladies, she walked straight into the side door of Prince Ren's mansion. An imperial eunuch clad in a red robe was already waiting in front of the door, together with a few young eunuchs who looked no older than 10 years old. Upon seeing Princess Ying Chuan, this imperial eunuch, who obviously had a rather high status in Prince Ren's mansion, hastily bowed and greeted her with a smile on his face. Was there any commotion just now? Princess Ying Chuan held her head high up and asked with an indifferent tone. A few ignorant men were following behind Princess, and now they have been used to fill up the moat. The imperial eunuch hastily replied, 5 of them are secret agents of Xian Kingdom, and 7 of them are from scouting office. Now, they have all sunk into the moat, and they won't give you any more troubles. Rest assured, Princess, except for those who should know about this, those who shouldn't know about this will never know that you're here. Princess Ying Chuan nodded her head, smiled sweetly, stretched out her finger and gently pinched the chin of the imperial eunuch, then walked into the side door with a smile on her face. While Wu Qi was about to follow Princess Ying Chuan into Prince Ren's mansion, he was surprised to find that the imperial eunuch, who should have gotten rid of the root of troubles and had no feelings for women, was swallowing a few mouthfuls of saliva, staring greedily at Princess Ying Chuan's swaying buttocks. With a strange smile on his face, he followed behind Princess Ying Chuan. How could this be an imperial eunuch? Clearly, he was a burly man with a strong desire. Strange, strange. Wu Qi murmured under his breath, then hastily plunged into Prince Ren's mansion. As the most experienced prince of Great Yan Dynasty, the mansion of Prince Ren, Yan Xianchen, was heavily guarded. Both the ground and the sky were protected by layers upon layers of defensive mechanisms. Wu Qi continued his journey underground. About 1,000 feet below the ground of Prince Ren's mansion, a defensive formation of 9 palaces grade was tightly wrapped up. On top of that, it was obvious that there was a master of formation guarding these formations. Streams of powerful ripples of energy were constantly circulating underground, constantly monitoring the activity underground. However, in Wu Qi's opinion, the 3-layered 9 palaces defensive formation was a little too simple and crude. Although the master of formation who constructed these formations had the cultivation base of the later stage of Jin Dan realm, the master of formation guarding here should only have the cultivation base of the early stage of Jin Dan realm. Therefore, the formations could only unleash less than 30% of their full power, and there were quite a lot of flaws in the circulation of their energy. Wu Qi had only extracted a great amount of earth element energies from the surrounding underground and wrapped them around his body. With that, he could easily penetrate through these 3 defensive formations. He even had the leisure to send his divine sense through the formations, peeping at the master of formation who was controlling these 3 formations. He was a human immortal of Jin Dan realm who was guarding on top of a tall tower located in the heart of Prince Ren's mansion. The 9-storied tall tower was connected to a total of 9 defensive formations in Prince Ren's mansion. It was the core of the defensive mechanisms of Prince Ren's mansion. The dark-skinned human immortal was sitting on the lowest floor of the tall tower, performing incantation gestures with a serious expression, controlling the operation of the 9 formations. However, because of his cultivation base and the cultivation of the formations, he didn't notice that Wu Qi had already entered Prince Ren's mansion. Sneering, Wu Qi followed closely behind Princess Ying Chuan and came to the back garden of Prince Ren's mansion. The back garden of Prince Ren's mansion was at least 3 times bigger than Lu Qingfeng's back garden. The garden was filled with luxuriant trees, and numerous abodes were hidden amidst the grasses and flowers. It was a very secretive place. With great familiarity, Princess Ying Chuan walked along a path paved with golden shells, and finally came to an abode surrounded by a stream. The abode was built entirely with pink, translucent strange stones, which made it look exquisite and luxurious, yet gave off a charming aura. Carefully, Wu Qi squeezed his way into the abode, and came out from an artificial hill that was filled with holes of various sizes. Coincidentally, there was a cave in the artificial hill that could fit Wu Qi, and it was densely filled with countless fist-sized holes. Through these holes, Wu Qi could see everything that happened in the abode. Peering through one of the holes, Wu Qi couldn't help but gasp. Right in front of the abode was a courtyard paved with palm-sized red jade blocks. A naked man, who stood over 8 feet tall, his skin as white as snow, his body strong and muscular, and his face handsome but filled with an evil aura, was wearing a special wheel made of pure gold, about 3 feet in diameter, on his lower body. Complacently, he was turning the wheel at high speed with both hands. The man's body stood straight up, and without even asking, one could tell that the wheel made of pure gold was extremely heavy. The wheel was spinning at a very fast speed, producing swooshing noises from time to time. Sparks kept bursting out from the friction between his body and the wheel. However, his body was not harmed at all. Instead, the wheel made of pure gold had some scratches left on it. A group of beautiful girls, whose every movement was filled with an enchanting aura, had surrounded the courtyard. Their eyes were fixed on the man's erect lower body, clapping their hands and shouting, "Sect leader, you are so awesome! Sect leader is getting more and more powerful." Wu Qi's teeth were chattering when he saw this. Subconsciously, he touched his private parts, grinned and shook his head. Using a wheel made of pure gold to wrap around that treasure and spin it at such a high speed? How could this be described as powerful? This was simply an extraordinary talent, a freak among freaks. All of a sudden, the historical records of someone from Liu Xiaobai's memory rushed into Wu Qi's mind. Shi Huang grew strong, and the Empress Dowager continued to be lascivious. Lu Buwei feared that he would be implicated, so he asked the man of the great Yin, Lao Ai, to be his lover. Sometimes he played music and asked Lao Ai to travel on the Tong wheel of the Yin Pass. When the Empress Dowager heard about it, she used it to trick her. When the Empress Dowager heard about it, she wanted to get it for herself. Lu Buwei entered Lao Ai and swindled people to accuse him of corruption. In history, apart from the famous fake eunuch Lao Ai, who else could accomplish such a feat? Lao Ai must be him. When he was still immortal, he could already play with a wheel made of paulownia wood. Now, his cultivation base should be at the same level as Yen Dan, Jingku, and the others. Naturally, his innate ability was even more powerful. The wheel made of paulownia wood was not heavy enough, so it was only right that he used a wheel made of pure gold to show off his ability. Wu Qi narrowed his eyes and carefully looked at Lao Ai from top to bottom with the corner of his eye. For some unknown reason, when he saw this fellow, Wu Qi felt like he was looking at a cobra that was spitting venom. Instinctively, he felt threatened. At this moment, Princess Ying Chuan came into the courtyard. Upon entering, she dropped to her knees and bowed to Lao Ai with a smile on her face. "Your servant, Ying Chuan, offers greetings to the sect leader of Great Sun, old immortal Lao Ai." Princess Ying Chuan's voice was soft and languid, filled with a seductive charm. Chapter 118. Right when Princess Ying Chuan stepped into the courtyard, Lao Ai, who had a muscular body like that of a fiend, immediately removed the golden wheel from his lower body while laughing out loud, then grabbed Princess Ying Chuan and brought her to his side. Very quickly, Lao Ai took off Princess Ying Chuan's clothes, then held the petite and beautiful Princess Ying Chuan in his arms as if he was carrying a baby. With a jerk of his body, he plunged deep into Princess Ying Chuan's body. "Ying Chuan, you little bitch. I haven't seen you for a few years, but your cultivation base has improved greatly." In about 15 minutes, Lao Ai had completely absorbed the enormous energy essence from Princess Ying Chuan's body. After purifying and refining all of them, he gave 1% of them to Princess Ying Chuan, while the rest of them were transformed into energies and turned into his own cultivation base. However, after Princess Ying Chuan absorbed this 1% of energies, her cultivation base had actually improved from the respiration tier of Xiantian realm to the body-strengthening tier. Princess Ying Chuan pressed her body tightly against Lao Ai's chest, giggled softly and said, Sect Master, Old Immortal, it has been 5 years since In Chuan last saw you. During the past 5 years, In Chuan has enjoyed himself with 43 Xiantian warriors and 1,759 peak stage Hotian warriors. Hee, the cultivation technique taught by Old Immortal is really incredible. In Chuan has plucked the innate yang energy from those people, and they still have no idea about it. A strange, four-colored gleam flickered in Wu Qi's eyes. He could clearly see a heterogeneous yet powerful energy essence bursting out from Princess In Chuan's lower abdomen, flowing into his body through Lao Ai's penis. Lao Ai's long hair stood up one after another, with countless wisps of white mist rising up from them. His muscles began to swell, turning from a streamlined and smooth muscles into sharp and angular muscles that looked like they were cut by an axe. Yes, said Princess In Chuan in a deep voice. Qin Qingshui wants In Chuan to find the Duke of Yanxing, Yu Xian, and Su Zhuguijing, Duke of Yanlu, for being a traitor and unfilial. His father was assassinated, and instead of avenging his father, he had colluded with his mother's clan to seize the foundation of Great Yan Dynasty. After pondering for a brief moment, Lao Ai waved his hand and drove away the few beautiful girls. He sat down on the jade bed, smiled at Princess In Chuan and said, "Fortunately, you came to find me. If not, Yan Chengfeng would be in great trouble and you, In Chuan, would be dead for sure." Hey, Qin Qingshui, this descendant of Qin Weang is quite ruthless. It's a pity that he's still young and anxious when something happens. How could he do such a thing? Laughing coldly, Lao Ai closed his eyes and pondered for a while. Suddenly, he waved his hand at Princess In Chuan and said, "Come, I'll tell you something. Later on, you'll go find Yan Chengfeng and make a deal with him. Ask your father to give the Tai clan a few prefectures in the Lu kingdom and let them form their own kingdom. They are not allowed to have any designs on your family. The condition is..." Lao Ai sneered and said, "Ever since Yu Xian became the imperial grandmaster of Great Yan Dynasty, I've been keeping my eyes and ears around him. Over the years, he had gotten to know him quite well. This fellow is greedy, lustful, and pretentious. But there is one good thing about him. When he accepts someone's money, he will definitely help them get things done. Yan Chengfeng bribed him with a county, asking him to help him with the matter of inheriting the title of Duke Yanlu. Yu Xian is a man who never hesitates when he accepts money. Now that he has accepted a county, the title of Duke will be secured for Yan Chengfeng. Judging from Lao Ai's performance, he should have formed his nascent soul. However, until now, he still hadn't discovered that Wu Qi had sneaked into his courtyard. Clearly, his cultivation base in soul and nascent divinity was just ordinary. No matter how powerful his energy was, no matter how strong his nascent soul was, a cultivator with a weak nascent divinity would eventually be like a pillar in the wall, and his achievement would always be limited. Wu Qi felt his scalp go numb. No wonder Lady Riang cursed Princess In Chuan as a slut who could sleep with any man. In just a short span of 5 years, 43 Xiantian experts and 1,759 peak stage Hotian experts had become Princess In Chuan's personal guests. The frequency of this was really astonishing. No wonder the tiny bit of energy Lao Ai fed back to her after he purified it was able to raise her cultivation base by 2 realms. Lao Ai enjoyed the remaining enormous amount of energy all by himself. Perhaps, this energy was equal to at least 100 years of laborious cultivation of a Jindan realm cultivator. In just a few seconds, Princess In Chuan's fair and tender skin had turned pink, and pinkish sweat kept dripping down from her body, forming a small puddle on the ground. Both of her hands were gripping tightly onto Lao Ai's arms, while her nails were desperately scratching on Lao Ai's skin. But Lao Ai's smooth skin was 100 times stronger and more flexible than raw cowhide. Princess In Chuan's long and scarlet nails had broken a few of them on his skin, but not even a scratch was left on his skin. Inside the artificial hill, Wu Qi, who had curled up into a meatball, had his eyes filled with a myriad of colors. What he saw made his divine soul tremble, and he had no idea where he was. Upon hearing what Princess In Chuan said, Wu Qi smacked his lips. There were supreme-grade energy stones in the national treasury of the Lu Kingdom? And Great Yen Dynasty even built a minor universal teleportation formation in the Lu Kingdom? It was a blunder indeed. If he had known this earlier, he would have paid a visit to the Lu Kingdom's royal palace before he left the Lu Kingdom. Perhaps what Yen Dan, Jingku, and all the other men had attained through over 2,000 years of laborious cultivation could not be compared to Lao Ai, this peerless evil man. However, the cultivation base obtained from this evil cultivation technique was, after all, not a stable foundation. Wu Qi thought to himself, no matter how strong Lao Ai's cultivation base was, there was no need for him to be afraid of him. All the cultivators who cultivated to Jin Dan realm and nascent soul realm by plucking cultivation techniques were just like castles on the beach. Their foundation was too weak, and they were not worth paying too much attention to. Princess Yingchuan's face turned extremely unsightly. The title of Duke Yenlu has become vacant once again. No matter who was the one who assassinated Yen Buji, and no matter who was the one behind all these, there will always be some clues. He has set up an inescapable net in advance, and once the mastermind makes a move, he will be able to capture the mastermind in one fell swoop. He has made a great contribution, but Yingchuan was assassinated by him, and Yen Qingfeng was unlucky enough to be removed from the title of Duke Yenlu of Zhuguijing. Forcing a few tears out of her eyes, Princess Yingchuan said with a sweet voice, "Old immortal, I, Yingchuan, have emptied all the supreme-grade energy stones in the Lu Kingdom's national treasury, activated the minor universal teleportation formation that Great Yen Dynasty had constructed in the Lu Kingdom, and came to Ji City in a hurry." Princess Yingchuan knelt on the ground, holding Lao Ai's thigh with both hands, and gently rubbing her chin against the sensitive part of Lao Ai's thigh. She looked at Lao Ai with a pitiful expression and said with a sweet voice, "Old immortal, it's not that Yingchuan doesn't want to listen to you, but if I didn't come here to ask for help, I'm afraid I would be homeless in the future." Not allowing Princess Yingchuan to say anything, Lao Ai said with a cold voice, "If you report this to Chief Yuxian, you will be dead for sure." Lao Ai looked at Princess Yingchuan lazily and said in an indifferent tone, "What am I doing? I need to protect myself." Yen Dan scolded him during the palace banquet, and gave him 3 months to investigate the case of Yen Buji's assassination. How is he going to investigate this case? He has no clue at all, so how is he going to investigate this case? He used you to oust Yen Qingfeng from the position of Duke Yenlu. Doesn't that mean the position of Duke Yenlu is vacant? Lao Ai let out a strange laugh, shook his head and said, "If you report this to Yen Qingfeng, Yuxian will only ask someone to drive you out of the imperial family palace with a big stick, and he will never listen to your nonsense. However, once you step out from the imperial family palace, Qin Qingshui will definitely send someone to kill you, and the news that Duke Yenlu, Yen Qingfeng, hired a killer to kill you will spread across Ji City in less than the time it takes to finish a meal. Zhuguijing of Great Yen Dynasty is plotting to seize the throne of a vassal state, and he has sent someone to assassinate Princess Yingchuan, who is the one who reported this case. This is more than enough to send him to eternal damnation." At last, Princess Yingchuan's body suddenly tensed up, and all her muscles began to tremble violently. Strange gurgling noises kept coming out from her throat. She leaned her body backward forcefully, and her eyes slowly rolled up. Her body was twitching like a frog that was skinned and electrocuted. It was a very bizarre sight. Princess Yingchuan listened attentively to Lao Ai's instruction, while Wu Qi's eyes were flickering, as he memorized every single word Lao Ai said in his mind. Lao Ai shook his head, breathed out a long sigh and said, "I've always looked down on Qin Weiyang. Not only is he unable to achieve anything, the descendants he raises are getting worse and worse. Although Qin Qingshui's scheme is extremely vicious, but after all, he is still too young. How could the mastermind show himself so easily?" Lao Ai panted lightly, then slowly placed Princess Yingchuan on the ground. He straightened his back and asked in an indifferent tone, "Yingchuan, why didn't you stay in the Lu Kingdom? Why did you come to Ji City? I remember I told you that you will only come back to Ji City once every 10 years and offer me what you have harvested. Why did you come back so early this time?" Lao Ai stared at Princess Yingchuan with surprise. Frowning, he casually pressed his hand to the side, and a jade bed appeared out of nowhere. Lao Ai lay down on the jade bed, then called over a few beautiful girls who stood under the eaves of the abode, asking them to climb onto the bed and have some fun with him. At the same time, he turned to Princess Ying Chuan and said, "Tell me everything in detail." Princess Ying Chuan dared not to be negligent. Without hesitation, she quickly told her that Lu Qingfeng was the illegitimate son of Yan Buji, who had now inherited the throne of Zhuguizheng and Duke Yan Lu. She also told her that his mother's clan, Lady Ryong, was from the Tai clan, Yuanyang of the Lu Kingdom. She also told her that the Tai clan, Yuanyang of the Lu Kingdom, where his mother's clan, Lady Ryong, came from. She also told her that the Tai clan, Yuanyang of the Lu Kingdom, was now preparing for a rebellion to seize the foundation of the Lu Kingdom. Then she told him the reason why she went to her old lover, Qin Qingshui, and asked for advice after arriving at Ji City. Stealthily, he opened his eyelids and peeked at Lao Ai and Princess Ying Chuan from the corner of his eyes. Suddenly, Wu Qi swallowed a mouthful of saliva. He had to admit that the current posture of both of them was very captivating. Lao Ai's sturdy body and Princess Ying Chuan's gentle and charming body were like the two extremes of yin and yang. Although they were emanating an extremely evil aura, they were giving off a boundless temptation. If not for the divine flame of order protecting Wu Qi's soul and stabilizing his mind in his spiritual ocean, and if he were any other cultivator, the fiend would have long grown inside his body, and the yin flame would have invaded his body, burning his Tao foundation into ashes. When Lao Ai entered Princess Ying Chuan's body, Wu Qi had his scalp go numb when he saw the ridiculously sturdy body of Princess Ying Chuan and the petite body of Princess Ying Chuan. Wu Qi had no idea how Princess Ying Chuan was able to endure such a frightening and huge creature, but judging from her moans, he could tell that she was experiencing a great thrill and a boundless pleasure. Lao Ai had only moved his body slightly, but Princess Ying Chuan immediately began to struggle and jump crazily like a fish that was scooped up from the shore. Apart from Princess Ying Chuan, there were nearly 100 enchanting beauties in the courtyard. The aura emanated from their bodies was exactly the same as Princess Ying Chuan's. If these beauties were the same as Princess Ying Chuan, the bees that Lao Ai released to pluck his energy, how amazing would Lao Ai's cultivation base be with this method? Hey hey! Lao Ai exhaled a long and rough breath. A strange pinkish flame burst out from the vicinity of his dantian, within which a wisp of red sun could be vaguely seen. The flame was calcining and purifying the impure energies that came gushing out from Princess Ying Chuan's body bit by bit, eventually turning them into extremely pure energies and being absorbed by the wisp of red sun. The impure parts of the energies were quickly turned into white mist and sprayed out from Lao Ai's hair. Princess Ying Chuan's body trembled, and she cried out with a shrill voice, "Qin Qingshui is a son of a bitch. Why did he do this to Ying Chuan?" Chapter 119. Wu Qi shrunk his body, and the dense earth elemental energies in the surrounding began to gather towards him, gradually wrapping him up. Inch by inch, his body sank into the ground, and he was about to leave Prince Ren's mansion. Right at this moment, a knock was heard from the entrance of the courtyard where the abode was located. An old man with a ruddy complexion and a big beard, who had a dignified appearance and a majestic bearing, walked slowly into the courtyard. The old man was clad in a dark green long robe, embroidered with a few green swallows spreading their wings. Obviously, it was the imperial robe of a king of Great Yan dynasty. Upon seeing the naked Lao Ai and Princess Ying Chuan, the old man's expression remained unchanged. He bowed at Lao Ai without looking sideways and said, "Master, your disciple has something that I need to discuss with you." Wu Qi, who had more than half of his body sunk into the ground, had a solemn expression on his face. He nodded his head lightly, then quickly fled with the fastest speed possible. The Prince of Ren, Yan Xianchen, was actually Lao Ai's disciple? If this news were to be spread out, perhaps Yan Dan would immediately come here with a sword in his hand. But why did he give this news to Yan Dan for free? Wu Qi narrowed his eyes and continued traveling at high speed underground. Along the way, he kept thinking about what Lao Ai had told Princess Ying Chuan. Suddenly, he let out a cold laugh. Sure enough, This Lao AI was a man who wished to see the world plunged into chaos. Perhaps he had been restraining himself for over 2,000 years, and now he had the intention to stir up a storm? Come to think of it, it was about time for him to come out and stir up a storm. Yan Xianxian was his disciple. That also meant a large number of ministers of Great Yan Dynasty and countless vassal kingdoms had actually become Lao AI's forces. For a peerless evil man like him to hide in Great Yan Dynasty for over 2,000 years, it was definitely not for the good weather and happiness of Great Yan Dynasty. Interesting, this is really interesting. I really want to see what kind of expression will Yan Dan have when he finds out that Lao AI is hiding in G City. Wu Qi laughed in a strange voice, then shook his head and said, No, unless I gather the innate qi of the 5 elements and form the 5 elements Jin Dan, only then will I be qualified to fish in this muddy water. What I have now is far from enough, far from enough. Before figuring out the ins and outs of the Great Sun sect, before figuring out the origins of this world, rashly intervening in the affairs of this place, even if they could gain a little advantage at the beginning, if they were not careful, their souls would scatter and scatter. No matter how magical the scroll of stealing was, Wu Qi was just a little cultivator at the early stage of Jin Dan realm, and he had only inherited the water element Jin Dan. He had not even found any innate gold element spirit item yet. So, what made him take the initiative to provoke all these troubles? Loki. No matter I am the inheritor of Scroll of Stealing or the sect leader's disciple of Underhand sect, I travel 1,000 miles just for the sake of wealth. What does the fate of Great Yan Dynasty have to do with me? Wu Qi kept reminding himself of his duty. He escaped from Prince Ren's mansion through the Earth Escape Art, found a secluded and deserted alley, and came up to the surface. Using his divine sense, Wu Qi carefully peered into the sky. The sky patrolling Eagle Guards of Scouting Office were wheeling in the sky not far away, and he didn't see any sky patrolling Eagle Guards in this area. Hastily, he changed into the official uniform of Kingdom Supervisor from Zhuguijing's mansion, strode towards the Duke of Zhuguijing's mansion, which was situated on the west side of the Imperial Palace. Although Zhuguijing's mansion could not meddle in the affairs of Great Yan Dynasty for the 37 vassal kingdoms in the west, it was a government office that stood above their heads. Therefore, in G City, when Wu Qi, who was clad in the official uniform of Kingdom Supervisor, walked on the street, he attracted a lot of attention. Along the way, Wu Qi came to Zhuguijing's mansion as if nothing had happened. After showing his identity medallion to the soldier on duty at the entrance, he went straight into the mansion. In just a short while, Wu Qi was followed by a few secret agents from Scouting Office. As the #1 confidant of Duke Yenlu, Wu Qi didn't follow Lu Qingfeng to Zhuguijing's mansion to work. Instead, he vanished into thin air for a period of time. For some people with an ulterior motive, this was enough to make a great article. Especially when none of the guards at the few city gates of the inner city found out how Wu Qi entered the city. The mystery behind this incident was even more worthy to be studied by those with an ulterior motive. Standing at the entrance of Zhuguijing's mansion, Wu Qi turned his head and gave a few glances at those secret agents who had been following him for a while. He let out a few strange laughs. The faces of those secret agents fell instantly, and they spun and left hastily. Wu Qi didn't want to go too far. He just wanted to scare them away, and only then did he swagger into Zhuguijing's mansion. Immediately, he heard a sonorous roar coming from the entrance. This gold mine was first discovered by the Gaoling Kingdom. The Songlang River is also the water system of the Gaoling Kingdom. What right does the Lishan Kingdom have to share the profits from it? The voice sounded like the clashing of metals, sharp and jarring to the ears. It shook the entire hall of Zhuguijing's mansion, and made the dust kept falling from the roof beams. Zhuguijing's mansion was the most traditional yamen of Great Yan Dynasty. There was a big door right in front of it, and behind the screen wall was a spacious square. On both sides of the square were 2 rows of offices, where all the officials under Wu Qi's command handled their official duties. At the far end of the square was a hall where the chief officials handled their official duties, and the sonorous voice just now was heard coming from this hall. Striding across the 300 feet wide and 1,000 feet long square, Wu Qi saw the officials under Zhuo Guizheng sneakily poking their heads out from the offices on both sides, peeking into the direction of the hall. Wu Qi snorted coldly, and his voice brought with it a bone-piercing coldness that pierced right into the ears of these officials. Only then did these officials discover Wu Qi's presence, and shrunk their heads back to their offices shyly, continuing with their own tasks. With a faint smile on his face, Wu Qi walked into the hall and saw Lu Chengfeng sitting behind a long table at the far end of the hall like a wooden statue. Both of his palms were locked into a lotus incantation gesture, placed before his dantian, and his eyes were drooping. He didn't pay any attention to the group of burly men who were fighting fiercely in the hall. Instead, he was exercising his cultivation and cultivating. Inside the hall, which measured about 300 feet in both width and length, Yan Bugui, Luo Kadi, Zhang Hu, and a few others were standing with their backs against the walls. Apart from Yan Bugui, who was keeping a vigilant watch on the two groups of men who were arguing fiercely in the hall, all the others had their minds drifting away. Perhaps Zhang Hu was thinking about the new lover he met in a brothel in Ji City, as his saliva nearly dripped down from his mouth. Just like Lu Qingfeng, Luo Kadi and Mao Yang, two warriors of Xiantian realm, had their eyelids drooping and were quietly regulating their breaths. Inside the hall, a tall and burly man, clad in a pale yellow battle robe and a chain-link soft armor, was shouting loudly. Judging from his voice, he was the emissary from the Gao Ling kingdom. Standing next to him was a young man, clad in a dark green battle robe, and underneath it was a half-body armor of Qilin devouring heart. His right shoulder was bared, and his left arm guard was actually a lower-grade magical item. He was emanating a faintly discernible ripple of energy. He was pulling and pulling the emissary from the Gao Ling kingdom, arguing with him with a loud voice. Next to both of them were several dozens of attendants from the Gao Ling kingdom and the Lishan kingdom. They were greeting each other's mothers, and he was greeting each other's ancestors. They were pulling and tangling each other like prostitutes soliciting customers on the street. If not because they were in the hall of Great Yan Dynasty's Zhuo mansion, perhaps these attendants, who had the cultivation base of at least 40 to 50 years, would have long fought each other. Stealthily, Wu Qi walked into the hall, sticking close to the wall on the right and bypassing the group of nearly crazy emissaries. Stealthily, he came next to Lu Chengfeng, lowered his voice and asked, "Isn't it just a gold mine? Why are they making such a ruckus?" The overall strength of the Gao Ling kingdom and the Lishan kingdom is stronger than the Lu kingdom. One gold mine less or one gold mine more won't decide the fate of the two kingdoms. Why are they doing this? Lu Chengfeng opened his eyes. Soundlessly, 2 6-feet-long streams of white mist sprayed out from his nostrils. When he saw Wu Qi, a smile bloomed on his face, then he lightly knocked on a scroll placed on the table with his finger and said, "It is fine if it is just a gold mine. This is the information sent by the West Wind Guards of Scouting Office just now. The gold mine that has the reserves of approximately 80 million gold coins is just an associated mineral vein. Underneath the gold mine is a purple gold mine that stretches for 30 miles. Both kingdoms have excavated purple gold marrow of excellent quality from this mine. Beneath the purple gold mine is an extremely high-quality metal-attributed spirit stone mine. Right now, the spies of the two countries and the West Wind Guard stationed in the two countries have yet to survey the range and quality of the metal-attributed spirit stone mine." With a flick of his sleeve, Lu Chengfeng shook out a white and dazzling energy stone, about the size of a soybean. He said indifferently, "This is an energy stone sample found by the secret agents of West Wind Guards after they robbed and killed a mine master from the Gao Ling kingdom. It is an upper-tier gold element energy stone of excellent quality, and it has a pure and single element. In the entire Great Yan Dynasty, there are only 7 gold element energy stone mines of such quality." Grabbing the tiny gold element energy stone, Wu Qi sensed the extremely pure and sharp gold element energy contained within it. Then he nodded his head. Among all the energy stone mines, the most common ones with the lowest value were the earth element energy stones, or those mixed with earth element energy stones of other elements. The energy stone mines were hidden deep under the ground. As the earth was of earth element, therefore, the earth element energy stones were the most common ones, and they were also mixed with fire and water element energy stones. In the vicinity of volcanoes or lakes, one could often find fire and water element energy stones. Therefore, apart from the earth element energy stones, the value of these two types of energy stones was slightly higher, and they were also relatively common. The rarest of them were the pure wood and gold element energy stones. Metal element energy stones were only found in huge metal mines, and it was extremely difficult to mine them, and it was extremely difficult to form them. As for wood element energy stones, unless they were found in a spirit land that was formed by the natural wood element energy, it was impossible for them to form naturally. Generally speaking, the value of metal element energy stones was ranked second among all the energy stones. Especially the pure gold element energy stones, which did not contain any impurities. Not only could it help in cultivation, it was also an indispensable supporting material for crafting all kinds of divine weapons. In addition to that, all kinds of powerful killing formations required pure gold element energy stones as the energy core, or else they would never be able to unleash the incomparably sharp killing force of gold element energy. Princess Yingchuan is going to come and request an audience with Young Master. Young Master, you just need to agree to her condition, allowing Tai clan to separate from the Lu kingdom and form their own kingdom. But Young Master, you need Princess Yingchuan to promise you that the army of the Lu kingdom will cooperate with the army of Tai clan to attack the Gaoling kingdom, and also cooperate with the Lishan kingdom to attack the Gaoling kingdom. Wu Qi sneered and said, "The Gaoling kingdom is the mortal enemy of the Lu kingdom. They will never reject Young Master's condition." Lu Chengfeng asked in a low voice, "Join hands with the Lishan kingdom? Fine, what about that mineral vein?" Wu Qi said in a low voice, "I'll go talk to the emissary of the Lishan kingdom. The army of the Lu kingdom will cooperate with the Lishan kingdom to attack the Gaoling kingdom, and after seizing that mineral vein, Tai clan will monopolize 70% of the production, which will be the foundation of their new kingdom. If they don't agree, we'll join hands with the Gaoling kingdom immediately. In short, we'll take over 70% of the mineral vein. Also, all the energy stones mined by the Lishan kingdom will be purchased by us at the market price." After a brief moment of silence, Wu Qi continued, "When discussing with Princess Yingchuan, Young Master, try to take as much advantage of her as you can. Little Meng City of the Three Mountains province must be in our hands. We don't care how much land the Lu kingdom gives to Tai clan, but Little Meng City of the Three Mountains province will be our private property." Without any hesitation, Lu Chengfeng agreed to Wu Qi's suggestion. Chapter 120. Before Princess Yingchuan arrived, Wu Qi had a quick discussion with Lu Chengfeng. After that, Lu Chengfeng grabbed a paperweight made from 1,000 years old ebony wood and forcefully slapped it on the table. At this moment, Lu Chengfeng exercised his cultivation and injected a great amount of innate energy into the paperweight. It produced a loud boom that sounded like the roar of thunder, and shook the entire hall. The emissaries of Gaoling Kingdom and Lishan Kingdom were struck dumb. Chi-Chi tidied up his armor, kneeled down and bowed respectfully to Lu Chengfeng and said, "Your Excellency Guizheng, forgive us for our rudeness." Lu Chengfeng snorted coldly, gave both of them a fierce glare, and cried out in a low voice, "What is this place? Is this a place where you can make a ruckus? Somebody, please bring both of them to the side hall and calm down. Come back after you've figured out the solution to this matter. You must remember that this is Ji City, the capital of Great Yan Dynasty. This is a place where there are rules and laws. You are not allowed to mess around and humiliate Great Yan Dynasty." Luo Kadi and all the guards swarmed forward and separated the emissaries and attendants of both kingdoms, half forcing them to the side hall on the left and right side of the hall. After that, they closed the door. A large group of guards surrounded the two side halls, guarding them so tightly that not even a drop of water could pass through. Lu Chengfeng gave Wu Qi a look, then rose and walked towards the side hall where the emissaries of Lishan Kingdom were staying. Before Princess Yingchuan could come here and bring out the conditions that Wu Qi already knew, Lu Chengfeng had to convince the emissaries of Lishan Kingdom first. Meanwhile, Wu Qi called out to Zhao Chenzue, Meng Xiaobai, and a few other men, then left Swaguizheng Mansion hastily. As soon as he stepped out of the door, Wu Qi was delighted to see Princess Zhang Li's exceedingly luxurious carriage speeding towards him. 8 ghost immortals, whose bodies were shrouded in a towering energy, were following close to the carriage with ferocious looks in their eyes. A dozen palace guards were riding on their mounts, trailing far behind, not daring to come too close. Seeing Wu Qi coming out from Zhuguozheng's mansion, Princess Zhang Li happily lifted the curtain, revealing half of her smiling face. "How did you know that Zidan was coming, and specially went out to welcome me? That's not right. Where are you going with them?" Quickly walking down the steps, Wu Qi approached Princess Zhang Li's carriage and said with a smile, "I'm going to do something fun. I was just fretting that I don't have anyone to use. Zidan, why don't I borrow these 8 seniors by your side?" Princess Zhang Li narrowed her eyes. With lightning speed, she stretched her hand out from the carriage window and grabbed onto Wu Qi's ear. Lowering her voice, she asked, "What do you want me to borrow them for? If there's anything fun to do, you must bring me along. If you want to hide from me and sneak away to have fun, I guarantee that no matter what you want to do, you won't be able to do it." Although Wu Qi's ear was grabbed, his smile became even more joyful. "All right, I've been waiting for you, Princess Zhang Li, to say this." If you didn't take the initiative to bring it up, Wu Qi was prepared to go to the imperial palace to look for her and invite her to oversee it. With Princess Zhang Li following him, no matter what outrageous things Wu Qi did, the others would think that it was logical, right? Using the disguise of this unruly princess to do something, it was indeed an evil pleasure. Without explaining to Princess Zhang Li what he was going to do, Wu Qi summoned those palace guards and asked them to find a coach used by ordinary wealthy merchants for Princess Zhang Li. After that, he asked the 8 ghost immortals to restrain their strong ghost aura, tie their loose hair into a bun, and put on some jewelry and accessories, trying their best to look like an obedient housewife. After giving the ghost immortals and the coach a glance, Wu Qi turned to look at the luxurious yet bold long dress worn by Princess Zhang Li, which had a totally different style from the conservative and traditional palace dress of Great Yan Dynasty. Although this long dress had a strange style, all kinds of tiny symbols on it showed Princess Zhang Li's noble status. Therefore, he didn't want to alert her when he was going to do something later. Noticing the dilemma on Wu Qi's face, Princess Zhang Li said cheerfully, "Don't worry about me, just lead the way. Bai Zhuer always has a lot of clothes on her, so I'll just change into another one later. By the way, what are you going to do? Why do you want them to dress like this?" Frowning, Princess Zhang Li looked at the 8 ghost immortals, who had changed their appearances into ordinary housewives. She was puzzled. Wu Qi didn't explain, just pressed his hand on Princess Zhang Li's head and shoved her into the coach. Wu Qi, who had also changed into a new outfit, sat on the coachman's seat, waved the long whip and gave a loud shout, then drove the coach towards the city gate. Princess Zhang Li grumbled discontentedly in the coach. Then, she heard the rustling of clothes, and began to change her clothes in the coach. At the same time, Wu Qi also sensed that the strange ripple in the coach, which had disturbed the surrounding energies of 5 elements, was gradually disappearing. Wu Qi nodded his head. Princess Zhang Li was indeed a clever girl, as she had retracted the 5-colored divine rays behind her back in advance. With the cultivation base of Princess Zhang Li and the 8 ghost immortals, if they exercised their cultivation with all their might, they could probably suppress the Jin Dan's strange sign on the surface of their bodies for about 6 hours. After that, they would no longer have the energy to suppress the ripple in their bodies. 6 hours was more than enough. They drove the coaches, bringing with them a large group of palace guards, secret agents of scouting office, and guards from Duke Yan Li's mansion, who had their faces completely changed. They left the inner city and middle city in a mighty manner. Approximately 2 hours later, they arrived at the east side of the outer city, on the street that was very famous in Ji City, the mighty Martial Street. Great Yan Dynasty's martial arts was very popular. Even in a remote corner like Little Meng City of the Lu Kingdom, there were still over 100 to 200,000 warriors begging for food there. In the territory of Great Yan Dynasty, there were countless wandering swordsmen who roamed freely in the martial world. As the heart of Great Yan Dynasty, Ji City was naturally a blessed land with the highest concentration of elite warriors. Those who believed that they could make a name for themselves in Ji City, could take root in Ji City, or even achieve a meteoric rise in their career, would gather here from all over Great Yen Dynasty. And the mighty Martial Street was the place with the highest concentration of warriors in G City. This mighty Martial Street, which was 50 feet wide and 25 miles long, together with the 24 side streets and alleys on both sides, was home to all kinds of warrior clubs, martial clubs, dojos, swordsmen, archers, and many other warrior guilds. There were at least tens of thousands of them. Among them, the largest warrior clubs and dojos had over 10,000 warriors under their command, and many of them were peak stage warriors of Xiantian realm. The background of these martial clubs and guilds was very complicated. Perhaps, one of the martial clubs was funded and established by one of the important ministers of Great Yen Dynasty. To put it bluntly, these martial clubs and guilds were the private armies and guards kept by those top-notch nobles or super wealthy people of Great Yen Dynasty. Furthermore, they didn't need to occupy the legal quota of private armies, and they could always ask these warriors to do whatever they wanted to do, even if they were involved in some shady business. Even Scouting Office, a secret spy organization of Great Yen Dynasty, would occasionally recruit some young warriors from the martial clubs in mighty Martial Street, and after training them, they would be recruited as the lower-level subordinates of Scouting Office. Sometimes, when there was a high-risk operation, the Scouting Office or the Criminal and Justice Office would directly recruit warriors here for their own use. Therefore, the mighty Martial Street was definitely the place with the most complicated population in G City. Hundreds of thousands of warriors would gather in this place. Fights, assassinations in the middle of the night, murders on the street, and many other things happened all day long. This was the only place in G City where the law of the land didn't really work, and everything was decided purely by the law of the jungle. Those in power of Great Yen Dynasty had purposely loosened the management of the mighty Martial Street and the few blocks around it. As long as these warriors didn't hurt the common people, no matter if they killed, burned, or did anything else in this area, no one would look into it. Warriors were fierce tigers and wild wolves. In order to maintain the bloodthirsty and wild nature of warriors, they had to follow the law of the jungle, and only then could they pick out the most outstanding talents. Therefore, the mighty Martial Street had always been a place where no one dared to approach. Those who dared to enter the street were either rich men who had a lot of money in their pockets and were ready to hire someone to do something for them, or they were the nobles who held great power in their hands and could help some lucky warriors achieve a meteoric rise overnight, or they were the heroes of the pugilistic world who thought they had great martial arts skills and could create a world for themselves in this place. When Wu Qi was driving the coach and bringing a large group of guards to the mighty Martial Street, right in front of the coach, two groups of warriors were fighting each other with blades in their hands. No one knew why they were fighting, but a few young and beautiful girls were screaming hoarsely at the side of the fighting ring. It could be assumed that these girls were the cause of the fight. In just the time it took to finish a pot of tea, 3 warriors had fallen to the ground, bathed in blood. Very quickly, they were dragged into an alley by a group of men clad in black clothes using iron hooks. Covered with blood stains, the victorious warriors were greeting those tall and burly warriors around them complacently. Laughing out loud, they hugged a few beautiful girls and walked into an inn on the side of the street. Wu Qi looked at these men and shook his head disapprovingly. Meanwhile, Princess Zhang stuck her head out curiously. Looking at the bloodstains and a few missing bloodstains on the ground, she said with a smile on her face, "Is there such a wonderful place in G City? By Zur, go back and give those few damn slaves a good beating. Why didn't they inform me about such a wonderful place? Did someone really get killed here just now? How many were killed? This blood is so red that it looks beautiful." Princess Zhonglu had changed into a conservative black long dress, yet she still looked very beautiful. A few burly men who were passing by the street saw Princess Zhonglu poking her head out from the window. They couldn't help but let out a sharp whistle and said, "Beauty, what are you doing in the mighty Martial Street? Are you looking for someone to kill, or are you looking for your gigolo? Although we brothers look ugly, we have strong muscles and bones, and we are the best partners on the bed." Princess Zhongli's face turned green, and the faint ripple of energy once again emanated from her face. Without changing his expression, Wu Qi twisted his wrist and lashed out the horsewhip with a shrill whistle. The few burly men were badly beaten and bleeding, and were sent flying several hundred feet away while howling miserably. Upon witnessing the mighty power of Wu Qi's horsewhip, all the idlers lowered their heads and remained silent. The few burly men who were being beaten were experts of peak Hotian realm. The man who could defeat them with such ease must be a Taoist of Xiantian realm. A Taoist of Xiantian realm was merely a coachman for someone else. Needless to say, who would dare to talk nonsense to Princess Zhongli? Wasn't that the same as courting death? The coach passed through the crowd, traveled along the mighty martial street for tens of miles, and finally stopped in front of a large-scale martial club. The front of this martial club was spacious and bright. It had 6 doors, and the 30-feet-tall green lacquer door was very eye-catching. A horizontal board, 6 feet tall and 30 feet wide, was hung above the door. 4 large golden characters were engraved on it with pure gold: "Subdue people with martial arts." Under the glittering and glinting board, a row of 18 burly men with their heads held high and chest puffed out were standing there in an awe-inspiring manner. Hiss! Wu Qi sneered, then crooked his finger at a few palace guards who had changed their clothes behind the coach and said, "Kick down the door, break both the arms and legs of the watchdogs and throw them inside. Tell their clubmaster, Shi Tianma, that our young miss has taken a fancy to their martial club, and we are here to challenge them." The few palace guards were struck dumb, while Princess Zhonglu was so happy that her eyebrows were raised. With a kick, the coach was smashed to pieces. Princess Zhongli jumped down from the coach herself, leaped up the stairs, and kicked the door away. "Who is Shi Tianma? Get your young miss out here. We are here to challenge them." Chapter 121. Challenge the Martial Club? The group of burly men standing at the entrance of the Martial Club were struck dumb. Every year, a few new martial clubs would be opened in mighty Martial Street, and there would be more martial clubs being pushed aside by their peers, or being destroyed by some powerful martial artists. But how could such a thing happen to them? Shi Tianma, the martial club master of Shi Martial Club, had come to Ji City 90 years ago to open up a martial club and teach disciples. After 30 years of hard work, Shi Martial Club now had over 30,000 disciples. Among them, there were over 70 Xiantian warriors and nearly 1,000 peak stage Hotian warriors. There was also a rumor that, although Shi Tianma did not have the innate talent of cultivating spirit root, he had entered the Tao of martial arts and had cultivated to the peak stage of embryonic breath realm of Xiantian realm. As long as he could tear apart the barrier of martial arts with his martial strength, he would be able to transform his qi and body with great perseverance and strength, stepping into the realm of human immortal from an ordinary warrior in Jin Dan. For the past 90 years, Shi Tianma had become a legend in the underworld of Ji City, an absolute grandmaster. Apart from the 30,000 apprentices who were still practicing martial arts in the martial club, countless apprentices had graduated from Shi Martial Club over the years. Some of these apprentices were the hanger-ons of influential clans, some were the generals in the army, and some were even the leaders of the sects in Ji City. In such a huge city like Ji City, as long as it was a business that could earn money, apart from those that were exclusively managed by the imperial family, Shi Martial Club could be found in all the other businesses. To be more specific, the power of Shi Martial Club alone was stronger than the combined strength of dozens of top-notch clans of the Lu Kingdom. No matter it was the absolute force or the influence in Great Yan Dynasty, even if all the forces of the Lu Kingdom were to be used, they would still be no match for Shi Tianma. Therefore, on the board hanging in front of Shi Martial Club, there was no sign of Shi Martial Club. Instead, there were 4 extremely arrogant characters, subduing others with martial arts. If explained in a positive way, it meant that Shi Tianma had a profound attainment in the Tao of martial arts and was highly respected in martial arts. Therefore, he was able to subdue others with martial arts. If someone was not convinced, Shi Martial Club would use their fists to beat them until they were convinced. This was the so-called subduing others with martial arts. With such an overall strength and power, who would dare to challenge Shi Martial Club in front of their door? Princess Zhongli kicked the door of the martial arts school into the courtyard. The strong men in front of the door were still in a daze. They stared at Princess Zhongli blankly. Their limbs were stiff as if they were sleepwalking, and their eyes were fixed on her. They couldn't figure out what was going on for a long time. They didn't react, but Princess Zhongli moved faster than anyone else. She laughed and rushed to the front of the two men, took out a handkerchief to pat her palm, and then gave each of them a heavy slap. A loud and clear popping noise startled Wu Qi, who was standing right next to him, and made him shrink his neck. Two burly men nimbly leaped up into the air, with wisps of blood spurting out from the corners of their mouths and large front teeth spilling out from their mouths. Drawing a parabola in the air, they thudded heavily into the huge courtyard behind the main entrance of Sher Martial Club, which measured nearly 2 miles in both width and length. When the two doors of the martial arts school flew into the courtyard, the 1-foot-thick door made from golden grain sandalwood smashed onto the ground and produced a thunderous boom. As Princess Zhongli had exerted too much force, the two doors slid straight into the courtyard along the ground paved with flagstones. A group of tens of young men, who were practicing their martial arts in the courtyard, let out a miserable howl as their ankles and tibia were broken by the door. They fell to the ground holding their calves and howling miserably. The incident happened too abruptly. On the spacious square, over 3,000 young men, who were lifting stone weights, playing with barbells, hitting wooden stakes, and practicing their martial arts, all stared blankly at the entrance. Although it was a spacious square, and there were several thousand people, none of them uttered a single word. It was not until two burly men who were guarding the entrance were sent flying into the courtyard by Princess Zhongli that the several dozens of young men who stood closest to the entrance roared out furiously, "Which blind fool dares to come to our Sher Martial Club and court death?" Before their words could fade away, miserable howls came from the entrance, one after another. Princess Zhongli's personal serving ladies, Bai Zhuer and Bai Zuer, rushed down from the coach with a beaming smile on their faces. Imitating their mistress, they kicked all the burly men who were guarding the entrance into the courtyard one after another. Although these two little serving ladies did not have any combat experience, they were after all female officials who enjoyed a very high status in the imperial palace. They had taken a lot of spirit pills, and their cultivation base was at the peak of the Hotian realm. How could these burly men who were guarding the entrance withstand their kicks and kicks? Relying on the power of Princess Zhongli, these two girls were used to being lawless and out of control. Therefore, they did not know how to control their strength. Princess Zhongli only managed to knock out the teeth of two burly men, but their kicks nearly broke all the internal organs of these burly men. Mouthfuls of bright red blood kept spraying out from their mouths, and very soon, a small puddle of blood was formed on the square. A series of clanging noises rang out, as nearly 100 apprentices of the martial club pulled out all kinds of blades, spears, swords, and halberds from their weapon racks, cursing furiously as they charged toward the entrance. Some reckless young men even roared out, "Let's see where these few girls came from. Chop the men behind them and feed them to the dogs, then we can use these few girls to warm our beds. Brothers, let's go. Whoever succeeds will be the first one to have his way with these 3 girls." These apprentices, who were sweating profusely in the square of Sher Martial Club and practicing some low-grade outer martial arts, were born in the marketplace and had been infected with countless bad habits. Relying on the fact that they had the advantage in numbers, these young men kept spewing obscenities like a rainstorm towards Princess Zhongli, Bai Zhuer, and Bai Zu. Upon hearing their words, Princess Zhongli, who was beaming with joy a moment ago as if she was just playing a game, had her face turned livid with anger. Abruptly, there was a faint 5-colored gleam flashing in her eyes. Waving her hand casually, Princess Zhongli cried out in a stern voice, "Break all the limbs of these people, then throw them into the myriad red river to feed the fishes. Beat them, break their dog heads and rob this martial club. Let's rob this dojo. Today, this dojo is the only one I'm interested in." Ignoring that she was wearing a cumbersome long dress, Princess Zhongli raised her jade-like legs and kicked away a dozen apprentices who came near her. Then, she turned her head and said to Wu Qi with a sweet smile, "Since you've taken a fancy to this martial club, are you going to rob it and open your own martial club? Just consider it as a gift from me. Later on, ask the officials of G City Mansion to get you the title deed of this place." In a fit of rage, Princess Zhongli did not control her strength. Every single apprentice who was kicked away by her had their bones broken and tendons torn, with blood gushing out from their 7 apertures. Before those apprentices who had charged forward with the courage and vigor could see the actions of Princess Zhanglu clearly, they had been knocked away by their fellow apprentices. Nearly 100 of them were lying on the ground, struggling and wailing. It was a very embarrassing situation. Meanwhile, a large number of men brought by Wu Qi had rushed forward. They picked up specially made sticks made of white wax, each half the length of an adult's arm, and began smashing and beating these apprentices on the ground. Their limbs and joints were broken, and many of their ribs were broken. It was especially true for those few experts from the palace guards. These apprentices had insulted Princess Zhanglu right in front of their faces, and it had scared them out of their wits. At this moment, with the order given by Princess Zhanglu, they struck a deadly blow on these apprentices, aiming their long sticks at the vital spots of those young and strong men. In just a blink of an eye, several dozens of apprentices had been killed, and nearly 100 were severely wounded. They were dragged out of the entrance of the martial club by Meng Xiaobai and his men, and thrown onto the street. For a moment, the mighty martial street was filled with crowds of people. Countless wandering knights and warriors were rushing towards Shi Martial Club, impatiently waiting to see who was so bold as to challenge Shi Martial Club. Upon witnessing the ferocious and imposing manner displayed by Wu Qi and his men, numerous apprentices on the square gathered together, looking at them with both anger and fear in their eyes. When an expert made his move, he would be able to know the actual situation of his opponent. As there were so many warriors of Xiantian realm and peak stage Hotian realm in Shi Martial Club, these apprentices had a very broad vision. Naturally, they could tell that these several hundred guards brought by Wu Qi were all top-notch warriors of the Hotian realm, and were not people they could afford to provoke. A loud, muffled shout that sounded like a thunderclap rang out as a burly man, who only had a piece of cloth wrapped around his crotch area, revealing his snow-white muscles, and had 9 exquisite tattoos of fierce tigers embroidered on his body, each with different expressions, dashed out from the crowd of apprentices. The 9-feet-tall burly man stared at Princess Zhanglu and shouted, "May I ask what is the purpose of visiting Shi Martial Club, miss?" Princess Zhanglu tilted her little chin up proudly, her eyes rolling up to the top of her head. She snorted coldly and said, "Are you deaf? I'm here to challenge your martial club. The geomancy of your martial club is pretty good, and the land is big enough. I've taken a liking to it." Wu Qi had fully performed the image of a henchman. He fished out a gold ingot from his sleeve and threw it on the ground, smiled at the burly man and said, "Anything our miss has taken a liking to, we've never failed to get it. Either you ask Shi Tianma to come out here and discuss with us, or you can buy the land of your Shi Martial Club with 3 taels of gold." 3 taels of gold? You've made a big fortune. The tiger-striped man was so angry that his face turned blue. The piece of land occupied by Shi Martial Club on Mighty Martial Street was very large, and it was Shi Tianma who had spent 3 years of painstaking effort in challenging all the martial clubs, convincing all the leaders of those martial clubs to sell their land to Shi Tianma at a very low price. 90 years had passed, and along with the reputation of Shi Martial Club, the value of this mansion could no longer be measured with money. Yet, he wanted to buy such a large piece of land and so many houses and buildings on it with just 3 taels of gold? This was daylight robbery. The burly man sneered. He gave Princess Zhanglu a look, shook his head, pointed his finger at Wu Qi and snapped, "If you want to seize the foundation of Shi Martial Club, you'll need to have the ability to do so. If you want to meet our old master, you'll have to defeat us, the instructors of the front yard." With a loud roar, the muscles on the burly man's body bulged. With a forceful stomp, he shattered 2 stone bricks on the ground. His eyes went wide as he let out a tiger roar, thrusting his fist towards Wu Qi's chest. This burly man had a much better moral standing than those apprentices of the martial club. When he saw that Princess Zhanglu was a girl, he was too lazy to fight with her. Instead, he chose Wu Qi as his opponent. Before Wu Qi could make his move, Meng Xiaobai, who had just dragged a few apprentices of the martial club and thrown them out of the entrance, had already rushed towards Wu Qi with a loud shout. "Defeat Xiaobai first, then you can fight my elder brother." A stream of white gas sprayed out from Meng Xiaobai's mouth, and he let out a long roar that sounded like a bull. The muscles on his body bulged up at a high speed. With a shake of his body, a deep, muffled, thunderous boom rang out as he raised both of his fists and thrust towards the burly man. A loud boom rang out, as Meng Xiaobai and the burly man had exchanged a solid punch. Meng Xiaobai was knocked 7 to 8 steps back while coughing blood, while the burly man's chest was left with an inch-deep mark of a fist. He stared blankly at Meng Xiaobai as his body slowly went limp. After that, blood began to ooze out from all 7 apertures of his body. Both men exchanged a punch. Meng Xiaobai was severely wounded, while the burly man's heart meridian was crushed and killed on the spot. A hideous smile appeared on Wu Qi's face. He grabbed Meng Xiaobai with one hand and slowly injected a thread of innate water energy into his body, helping him dredge his meridians and digest the clotted blood. While doing that, he cried out with a stern voice, "Who else? If no one dares to come forward, then ask Shi Tianma to come out and talk to me." With an unsightly expression, all the apprentices of the martial club took a few steps back, but none of them said a word. Wu Qi gave Yi Yan and these apprentices a glance. Suddenly, behind this group of apprentices, he saw a man that he had never expected to see. That day when Wei Xiaoxiao paid a visit to Lu Chengfeng, this man was one of the guards who stood beside Wei Xiaoxiao's coach. Together with a few attendants, he was standing behind the crowd, staring at Wu Qi with great astonishment. Right when Wu Qi saw him, this man immediately spun and left. Chapter 122. Seeing the guard of Wei Xiaoxiao turn around and flee, Wu Qi did not have the time to figure out why he was here. From Meng Xiaobai's waist, Wu Qi pulled out a sharp knife that all the villagers of Meng village had a habit of carrying with them. With a shake of his hand, he threw the knife towards the man. Along with a sharp whistling sound, the sharp knife pierced through the air. The handle of the knife smashed forcefully onto the back of the man's head, causing his upper body to lean forward and fall to the ground while foaming at the mouth. "Hey, our young miss has personally come to challenge you. Who dares to run away? Who dares to run away? If Shi Tianma doesn't show up, all of you will die." Wu Qi glared at those apprentices in front of him and scolded them with a stern voice. Zhao Chenzue's eyes shone brightly. When he saw Wu Qi had purposely knocked out that man, he hastily brought a group of ferocious guards and dashed forward, dispersing the apprentices in front of them with sticks. After that, they tied up the guard and a few followers beside him and brought them next to Wu Qi. The few men who stood together with the guards struggled and roared, but Zhao Chenxue just let out a loud shout and gave them a round of beating. The few men were badly battered, and their faces were swollen and bruised. All they could do was cry out in pain, and none of them dared to utter any more curses. The secret agents of Scouting Office acted quickly. They rushed forward and tied the joints of these few men with ropes made from cow tendon, then gagged their mouths with strips of cloth that came with a strange smell, and dragged them to the back. A few instructors of the martial club dashed out, pointing their fingers at Wu Qi and shouted, "How presumptuous! This is the honorable guest of our club master. Why are you tying him up? Let them go, quickly let them go. Children, surround this group of people who don't know life from death." Following the scolding of these instructors, a large group of apprentices of the martial club pulled out their weapons, or picked up some stone chains, wooden sticks, and some other weapons. Slowly, they formed a circle, surrounding Wu Qi and his company in the middle of the square. On top of the wall of Shi Martial Club, more and more warriors came out to watch the show. These martial artists who were eager to see the world in chaos were either sitting on the wall or lying on the wall, laughing and pointing at the scene. Someone even blew a sharp whistle, pointed his finger at them and cursed at the top of his voice, "Cowards of Shi Martial Club. They are here to challenge our club. According to the rules of the Jianghu, we should fight them with real swords and spears. Are you trying to bully us with numbers?" Wu Qi laughed out loud. He cupped his fists and bowed to those warriors who were watching from the top of the wall. "Thank you for speaking up for justice. Today, our young miss has taken a fancy to the property of Shi Martial Club. Therefore, she has brought all of our brothers here to challenge the Martial Club and seize the place. I hope all of you can be our witness. If we can defeat Shi Tianma today, this Shi martial club will be ours." All the warriors on top of the wall burst into loud laughter, one after another, agreeing with Wu Qi's clamor. Someone had come to challenge Shi martial club, and this was a rare scene. Therefore, these warriors were eager to see the fight turn into a river of blood. Therefore, they kept cursing at Shi Tianma, cursing him as a cowardly old turtle who only knew how to bully those adventurers who did not have any power, and when a real tough guy came knocking on his door, he could only cower and tremble in fear. Amidst the chaos, 4 of the 8 ghost immortals who were disguised as servants had blended into the crowd, stealthily sneaking into the backyard of Shi martial club. Under the bright sunlight, all the escape techniques of ghost immortals who had cultivated themselves into in deity with the body of a ghost had lost their effectiveness under the bright sunlight. Therefore, they could only take advantage of the chaos and sneak into Shi martial club. With their current attire, they looked no different than any servant or servant from an ordinary influential family. Therefore, they did not attract any attention from other people. Meanwhile, Wu Qi was still making a loud clamor, insisting on the so-called rules of the martial world, and asking the people of Shi martial club to come out and fight with him. However, those instructors on the scene were not the ones who could make the decision. They could only order all the apprentices to form a huge circle and surround Shi martial club, constantly compressing the space for them. None of them dared to answer Wu Qi's question, as they were not qualified to decide the future of Shi martial club. Whistles and clamor rose from all directions, and those warriors who came to watch the fun became even noisier. Since the experts of Shi martial club did not show up, the fact that nearly 3,000 apprentices had surrounded a few hundred warriors who came to challenge the martial club was a very big deal. If this matter were to be spread out, the reputation of Shi martial club would be tarnished to a great extent. These warriors kept yelling and cursing wantonly, even cursing 18 generations of Shi Tianma's ancestors. Right when the atmosphere was getting tenser and tenser, a long and sonorous cry that towered into the clouds was suddenly heard coming from a few courtyards of Shi martial club. A deep and powerful voice suddenly rang out amidst the long cry. "Which junior dares to be so presumptuous? Who dares to stir up trouble in Shi martial club? You bunch of useless fools, get the hell out of here now." The last word, "get the hell out of here," was like a muffled thunderclap. Nearly 1,000 warriors, who were either standing or lying on top of the wall, cried out in alarm at the same time. Blood sprayed out from their ears as they lost their balance and tumbled down from the top of the wall, nearly dying from the fall. Accompanied by the loud cry, a group of over 20 men, each clad in a long black robe, with various weapons hanging on their waists, walked slowly out from the hall at the far end of the square, led by an old man. All the instructors on the scene immediately breathed out a sigh of relief. They smiled and said, "Young martial club master is here, we can finally put our minds at ease. Greetings, young martial club master." Shi Wugo, the only son of Shi Tianma, was an expert of unity god tier of Xiantian realm, and enjoyed a great reputation in the martial world of Ji City. After all, it was extremely difficult for a warrior without any background to cultivate into the realm of Xiantian realm, let alone breaking through the respiration tier of Xiantian realm and stepping into a higher realm. Unless the disciples of the 13 immortal sects of Great Yan Dynasty possessed a perfect legacy of cultivation, and also possessed a spirit root that was more suitable for cultivation, it was nearly impossible for an ordinary warrior to cultivate into the higher realm of Xiantian realm. As a warrior, it was said that Shi Tianma had cultivated to the peak of embryonic breath realm of Xiantian realm, and Shi Wugo had also reached the realm of unity god. In the martial world of Great Yan Dynasty, both father and son could be considered as the supreme grandmasters. Therefore, when they saw Shi Wugo, all the instructors and apprentices of the martial club immediately spread out and lined up neatly on both sides of the square. They no longer looked as tense as before. Shi Wugo's stature was not tall, about 6 feet tall, clean and skinny. His white hair and beard were tied into a bun with a red string. It was said that he was more than 100 years old, but Shi Wugo's complexion was smooth like a young man's. He looked exactly like the so-called white hair with the ruddy complexion. He was clad in a black long robe with wide sleeves, and a long sword that was almost as tall as his body was hanging on his waist. He took one step at a time and came before Wu Qi in a steady manner. Disdainfully, he gazed at Wu Qi, who had used a mystic technique from Scroll of Stealing to conceal all his aura, and the ripples of his inner energy were only at the meridian cultivating tier of Xiantian realm. Shi Wugo shook his head. He gave Princess Zhonglu a sidelong glance. Princess Zhonglu had retracted the 5-colored divine rays within her body, and her aura was muddled and hard to detect. Shi Wugo could barely sense that Princess Zhonglu had a cultivation base of meridian cultivating tier or higher, but that was all. He snorted coldly, then cried out in a deep voice, "So you are the ones who injured my disciples? Fine, I want all attendants and personal guards to cripple one of your own arms, and this little girl will have to kneel in front of Shi Martial Club for 3 days to atone for her crime. After that, she will give me a generous compensation for the medical expenses of my injured disciples. You young men have no idea of the immensity of heaven and earth. Luckily, you have come to Shi Martial Club and met a kind man like me. If it were any other martial club, you would have suffered a great calamity." Shi Wugo had put himself in a very high position, but Wu Qi and Princess Zhonglu did not appreciate his kindness. Upon hearing his words, Princess Zhonglu could not help but sneer and say, "You want me to kneel for 3 days to atone for my crime? In all my life, you are the first old man who dares to talk to me like this." An ominous gleam flickered in Princess Zhonglu's eyes. She fiercely sized up Shi Wugo's skinny body, trying to figure out where she could strike first to give him a hard time. Meanwhile, Wu Qi was carefully sizing up Shi Wugo from top to bottom. A warrior of deity innate tier? This Shi Wugo had obviously attained the embryonic breath tier of Xiantian realm, and he was at the peak of it. Especially Shi Wugo's skin, which was glossy and smooth to the point that it looked a little strange, and there was an abnormal green hue underneath his skin. Obviously, he was cultivating with some strange cultivation technique that focused on tempering his corporeal body. How could he be a legendary warrior? A bright gleam of 4 different colors flashed in Wu Qi's eyes. He had seen through Shi Wugo's cultivation base. If not because there was a special cultivation technique in Scroll of Stealing that focused on cultivating one's eyes, perhaps he would have been fooled by Shi Wugo today. The cultivation technique he was cultivating with was extremely strange. Although the innate energy in his body was not very strong, all the energy was gathered in his fleshly body. By a rough estimation, the strength of Shi Wugo's fleshly body was at least 10 times stronger than the current Wu Qi. After injecting his innate energy into his eyes, Wu Qi could clearly see the dazzling light emitting from Shi Wugo's intrepid fleshly body. He couldn't help but shake his head. No wonder Lao Ai told Princess Ying Chuan that the person who assassinated Yan Buji was related to Shi Martial Club. Judging from Shi Wugo's current condition, how could he be a warrior? Behind him, there was at least an existence that was equal to the 13 immortal sects of Great Yan Dynasty. Fortunately, Lao Ai had been operating in Ji City for so many years, and even the Prince of Ren, Yan Xianchen, had become his disciple. If not, who would have thought that a martial club in mighty Martial Street would have the courage to assassinate a duke of the dynasty? Sighing lightly, Wu Qi fished out a total of 300 explosive talismans, which were produced by Heavenly Spirit Sect, from his storage ring. He threw the talismans, which were tightly bundled with a red string, towards Shi Wugo. With a quick reaction, Shi Wugo grabbed the thick stack of paper with one hand. "What is this? Why are you giving this to me?" Shi Wugo looked at the explosive talismans, which were tightly bundled with a red string, and could no longer be identified. Then, he turned to look at Wu Qi with great astonishment. He hefted the bundle of explosive talismans in his hand. It looked as light as a feather, and there was no scent or poison on it. It didn't look like a hidden weapon used to assassinate someone. Without hesitation, Wu Qi grabbed Princess Zhongli's little hand, spun and sprinted away. After running several hundred feet away, with a thought in his mind, the thick stack of explosive talismans in Shi Wugo's hand exploded abruptly. The raging flame swept across an area of 1,000 feet in circumference. Shi Wugo was shrouded in dark smoke from the explosion and was sent flying backward. Blood that was pale green in color and sticky like ink kept spraying out from his broken body. The group of over 20 Xiantian warriors who followed behind him didn't even have the time to let out a miserable howl before they were ripped into pieces by the explosion. Those apprentices of the martial club who lined up neatly in the square were howling miserably. Although they were quite a distance away from the center of the explosion, the power of 300 explosive talismans exploding at the same time was extremely domineering, almost comparable to the power of an upper-grade 9 Heavens Thunder talisman, which was drawn by a human immortal of Jin Dan realm from Heavenly Spirit sect with all his energy. Nearly 1,000 apprentices of the martial club were thrown into the air by the shockwave, and were thrown several hundred feet away. It was a complete mess, and blood was everywhere. A long howl that sounded like the howl of a wild beast was heard coming from the backyard of the martial club. A stiff, cold, and emotionless voice was heard coming from afar. "Who dares to hurt my son, my disciple? Hand over your life." A strong gust of wind tore apart the flame produced by the explosion of the explosive talismans, as a tall and burly figure appeared before Wu Qi, carrying the severely wounded Shi Wugo. Chapter 123. Shi Tianma, the owner of Shi Martial Club. Different from his short and scrawny son, Shi Tianma stood nearly 10 feet tall and burly, so muscular that he looked like the human form of Xiong Qing and his brothers. His hair was so dark that it shone brightly, as if it was a black hole that absorbed all the light. His skin was strangely pale, so pale that it looked lifeless and lifeless. However, just like his son, underneath his skin, there was a very light green hue. Bringing along a strong wind, he dashed towards them from the backyard. After shattering the flame and air waves produced by the explosion of 300 explosive talismans with a single punch, Shi Tianma's aura rose to a higher level. An invisible strong wind was coiling around his body, pressing towards Wu Qi and Princess Zhanglu without ceasing. When he dashed towards them just now, he lightly tapped the ground with the tip of his foot, shattering all the 2 feet thick stone bricks on the ground into powder. Wu Qi could see and hear everything clearly. When Shi Tianma was dashing, he did not use any innate energy, but purely relied on the strength of his fleshly body. Yet, his speed was almost the same as the speed of an ordinary Jin Dan flying sword. On top of that, when he was rising and falling, his footsteps sounded like muffled thunders, extremely heavy. His body weight was also much heavier than an ordinary person. Judging from the sound of his footsteps, the density of his body was at least 30 times that of an ordinary person, and the density of his body could be compared to an iron that had been tempered 100 times. How powerful was the power contained in a body like this? Wu Qi had no doubt that this guy could even use his fleshly body to fight against the spells and flying swords of a Jin Dan human immortal. However, he did not have the strange signs that a Jin Dan human immortal should have. His cultivation base should be at the embryonic breath tier of Xiantian realm, but the strength of his innate energy was at least 100 times stronger than his son, Shi Wugo. The innate energy in his body was nearly compressed into a mercury-like substance. What an evildoer! What an evildoer cultivation technique! Gingerly, Wu Qi looked at Shi Tianma. His right hand was tightly gripping Princess Zhongli's little hand, shielding her behind his back. A strange four-colored gleam was flashing in the depth of his eyes, as he was carefully observing every movement of Shi Tianma, fearing that Shi Tianma would suddenly lay his hands on Princess Zhonglu. 4 ghost immortals walked up slowly and stood beside Princess Zhonglu, guarding her. 4 pairs of deadly still and gloomy eyes were fixed on Shi Tianma. Shi Tianma, who had a handsome face and looked to be in his 30s, was carrying his son, whose body was badly damaged by the explosion and was dripping with blood. He roared furiously, "What kind of grudge does Wugo have with you? Junior, how many explosive flame talismans did you use to injure him to this extent?" Forgetting to talk with Wu Qi, Shi Tianma let out a few furious roars, then hastily sprayed out streams of green mist from both palms, slapping forcefully onto Shi Wugo's body. Then he took out a few dark green pills, which emanated a strong scent of grass and wood, and made Wu Qi feel dizzy after smelling them. Then he stuffed them into Shiwugo's mouth. Very soon, the wounds on the surface of Shiwugo's body began to heal. The healing speed was so fast that no one could believe that he was still a normal human being. Wu Qi glanced at the few dark green pills, and from their smell, he could tell that they were a few extremely poisonous herbs. These herbs were mentioned in Scroll of Stealing as well. Not only were they extremely poisonous, they also contained a strange force that could temper the fleshly body and stimulate the potential of one's body. However, these herbs were not meant to be consumed by humans, but were used by some evil cultivators to refine various demon beasts as pets, so they could be used to guard their sect. Yet, Shi Tianma had actually fed his own son with this strange pill, which was called Beast Body Pill. Was it because both father and son were demon beasts that had transformed into human form, or had they been refined by someone using an evil cultivation technique? In Wu Qi's mind, the latter possibility was more likely. After all, for demon beasts to transform into human form, they had to form their demon cores like Xiongqing brothers. Without cultivating into a demon immortal, they could only maintain their beast form. Looking at Shiwugo's wounds that were healing at an incredible speed, Wu Qi said coolly, "This is the best kind of explosive talisman that Heavenly Spirit Sect sells to the public." 300 of them were detonated at the same time. This kind of explosive talisman costs 60 gold coins in the market. In order to injure Shiwugo, I've spent quite a lot of money. Princess Zhongli did not have the concept of money. She poked half of her face out from behind Wu Qi's shoulder, smiled and said, "That's right, 60 gold coins for one explosive talisman, and 300 of them would cost 18,000 gold coins. Even 18,000 gold coins could not kill a man. It seems that the explosive talisman of Heavenly Spirit Sect has been diluted." Yen Bugue, who was standing aside with the secret agents of Scouting Office, nearly fell to the ground. He looked at Wu Qi with a bitter expression, shaking his head. That was 300 explosive talismans, and he just threw them all at once? Although they were the lowest grade talismans of Heavenly Spirit Sect, they still cost 18,000 gold coins. Yen Bugue kept murmuring to himself, as he had no idea where Wu Qi got so much money. He knew that Wu Qi bought 200 explosive talismans from him for the first time. But when did Wu Qi get his hands on 300 explosive talismans? Both Princess Zhongli and Yen Bugue had different reactions to Wu Qi's extravagant spending. Shi Tianma was so angry that his body was trembling. He cried out with a stern voice, 300 explosive talismans? What grudge do you have with my son? Is it worth it for you to use such a method to injure him? Who exactly are you people? Are you here to challenge the Shi Martial Club? Shi Tianma had also come to his senses. Both Wu Qi and Princess Zhongli did not look old, and it was not the result of taking some medicinal pills or using some evil cultivation technique to maintain their youthful appearance. Instead, they were truly young boys and girls. None of them was older than 18 years old. Yet, both of them had the cultivation base of Xiantian realm. Needless to say, they had a very solid background. Detonating 300 explosive talismans at once just for the sake of beating someone up was not something an ordinary person could do. Putting aside the fact that 300 explosive talismans were worth over 10,000 taels of silver, who in their right mind would actually bundle up the talismans and detonate them? One explosive talisman could severely injure a warrior who had cultivated his internal energy, and 10 explosive talismans could severely injure a Taoist of respiration tier of Xiantian realm. When 100 explosive talismans exploded at the same time, it could even threaten the life of a human immortal like Jin Dan. Would an ordinary person take the risk of being killed by the explosion and detonate 300 explosive talismans at once? It was not only a rich and overbearing act, but also a hint of insanity. Judging from the way Wu Qi acted, he did not look like he came from an ordinary warrior family. Even those wealthy and powerful merchant families who had been living for generations would never be able to cultivate someone like him. Judging from the way he acted, he did look like a warrior with blood and iron in his veins, and he was definitely an elite who had crawled out from mountains of corpses and seas of blood. And here was the problem. As Wu Qi looked to be younger than 18 years old, How could he possess the temperament and experience of a warrior with blood and iron in his veins? The raging Shi Tianma forced himself to calm his mind. Deep in his eye sockets, a pair of eyes gleaming with a strange green gleam was fixed straight at Wu Qi. Shi Wugo struggled hard in Shi Tianma's palm, groaning and yelling, asking Shi Tianma to avenge him. If not for the profound cultivation technique practiced by him and his son, which made their fleshly body much stronger than ordinary warriors and cultivators, he would have been blown into pieces by the sudden attack launched by Wu Qi just now. Although he reacted quickly and exercised a defensive mystic technique to prevent his fleshly body from being blown into pieces, his internal organs were still severely injured. "Dad, kill them. Capture that little girl. I want to teach her a good lesson." Shi Wugo screamed with a hoarse voice, glaring at Wu Qi and Princess Zhonglu with a ferocious gleam in his eyes. Shi Tianma stretched out his hand and pressed on Shi Wugo's mouth. He stared at Wu Qi and Princess Zhonglu and snapped sternly, "Who are you? Why are you stirring up trouble in my Shi martial club? Although I'm a little overbearing when I'm in Ji City, I've never offended any noble. With your cultivation base, and..." Shi Tianma gave Meng Xiaobai and the others a glance, sneered and said, "Neither of you have guards that ordinary people can have. If I may ask, which one of you have offended?" Wu Qi did not say a word, but a strange gleam was seen flowing in the depth of his eyes as he kept staring at Shi Tianma. How much blood essence did it take to temper such a strong fleshly body? No matter what kind of evil cultivation technique Shi Tianma had cultivated to achieve what he had today, there was no doubt about the strength of his fleshly body. For others, Shi Tianma's fleshly body was useless. If it were to fall into the hands of some evil cultivators, it would be a good material for them to cultivate all kinds of battle tools and puppets. But for Wu Qi, Shi Tianma's fleshly body was simply a great tonic. With such a strong and powerful fleshly body, how much spirit, energy, and spirit could he have? If he could capture Shi Tianma alive, Wu Qi would be able to borrow the energy essence in his body, allowing him to quickly break through the stages of meridian cultivating and body strengthening by using the source of Earth Chapter, Wood Chapter, and Fire Chapter. Currently, Wu Qi's fleshly body had the word soft. If he could complete the body strengthening of earth, wood, and fire, his fleshly body would be able to possess the heaviness and firmness of earth, the flexibility and longevity of wood, and the vigorous vitality of fire. He is indeed a good thing. We can't let him go. Wu Qi was gazing at Shi Tianma with a strange gaze. It made Shi Tianma's heart turn cold. If Wu Qi was not a lunatic, it would mean that Wu Qi was looking down at him with a condescending look. If Wu Qi was not a lunatic, then he definitely had something to rely on. Shi Tianma fixed his gaze on Wu Qi, suppressed the uneasiness in his heart and cried out, "Who are you? Why are you causing trouble in my Shi martial club? If I have offended you in any way, I'm willing to apologize to you." The surrounding disciples burst into an uproar. When had they ever seen Shi Tianma admitting defeat in such a humble manner? He was the strongest grandmaster of martial arts in Ji City, so why would he lower his head and admit defeat to two young men and women who came to cause trouble? Wu Qi still didn't say a word. With a strange smile on his face, he kept staring at Shi Tianma from head to toe. But it was Princess Zhonglu who couldn't bear it anymore. She leaped out from the crowd, laughed and said, "Why am I causing trouble in your place? Ugh, I'm not. Ugh, I've taken a fancy to this courtyard of yours. Sell it to me for 3 taels of gold, and you can go wherever you want." Just now, when Wu Qi said he would buy Shi Martial Club for 3 taels of gold, Princess Zhonglu could still remember it until now. Shi Tianma paid no attention to Princess Zhonglu, who obviously only knew how to stir up trouble. He stared at Wu Qi and asked in a cruel tone, "Why are you not talking? Are you waiting for something?" Before his voice could fade away, the ground of Shi Martial Club suddenly trembled a few times. A muffled explosion came from the backyard. Vaguely, one could see a large number of bricks, tiles, and stones flying high up into the sky. At least 7 to 8 buildings were blown up into the sky. A couple dozens of human figures were ripped into shreds amidst the airwaves and broken bricks. Looking from afar, A great number of broken limbs were falling down from the sky like raindrops. Shi Tianma's expression changed abruptly. He cried out with a stern voice, "Who broke through the formation of my secret chamber?" From the direction of the backyard, ghost howls soared into the sky. 4 grayish-white, translucent human figures were seen shooting up into the sky. Countless broken objects were brought up by the chilly wind, flying messily together with these 4 human figures, flying straight towards Wu Qi. Accompanied by an ear-splitting ghost howl, a white human figure carrying a few objects flew straight towards Wu Qi. "Mr. Wu Qi, here is the identity token of Duke Yen Lu, and it is sealed with a few layers of restrictive spells." "The identity token of Duke Yen Lu?" Wu Qi sneered. Shi Tianma's face fell instantly. He hugged his son and sprung up into the sky like a cannonball. Chapter 124. Without any ripple of magical energy, Shi Tianma sprung up into the sky, relying solely on the muscle strength of his legs, and leaped up into the sky like a flea. An ordinary man could jump 3 feet high, a warrior of the Hotian realm could jump 30 feet high, and a Taoist of Xiantian realm could jump 1,000 feet high by riding on the wind. Shi Tianma leaped up into the sky purely with his muscle strength. What Wu Qi heard was a thunderclap, and a dark shadow flashed before his eyes. In the next moment, Shi Tianma had already leaped over 5 miles high. In just a snap of a finger, Shi Tianma had leaped up 5 miles high. He let out a long and sonorous cry and thrust his right arm forcefully towards the sky. A white air barrier shot out to a distance of 3 to 5 miles. Borrowing the counterforce from the explosion of the air barrier, his body turned into a dark shadow and fled towards a far distance. Every movement of his consumed only the strength of his fleshly body, as he did not use any of the innate energy in his body. 6 gusts of chilly wind towered up into the sky. Just as Shi Tianma's body had traveled less than 1,000 feet, the 6 grayish-white chilly winds had already coiled around him. Suddenly, ghost cries rang out in the sky, as the sky was filled with green phosphorescence and chilly thunderbolts the size of a human head. The densely packed thunderbolts kept exploding and shattering the clouds in the sky. Countless drifting clouds spread out in all directions, leaving behind long trails of cloud in the sky. Shi Tianma roared furiously, thrusting his right arm out again and again, forcing those ghost immortals to keep retreating. It was near noon, and the scorching sun was shining high up in the sky. The overall strength of these ghost immortals had been weakened to the extreme. The combined strength of 6 ghost immortals was merely equal to the strength of 2 ghost immortals. The strength of Shi Tianma's fleshly body was mighty and tough. Although it was a secret evil technique, the attribute of his strength was of pure yang, which was a perfect counter to these ghost immortals. The chilly thunderbolts unleashed by 6 ghost immortals bombarded Shi Tianma, yet they could barely entangle him and had no way to fight him face to face. Wherever Shi Tianma's fists passed, the chilly wind would be torn apart, and the thunderbolts would shatter. Occasionally, when his fists landed on the bodies of these ghost immortals, the ghost immortals who had transformed into their original forms would let out strange cries, transform into countless chilly winds, and flee several thousand feet away. When they regained their original forms, they would unleash the chilly thunderbolts and pounce towards Shi Tianma once again. These ghost immortals had made up their mind. Even under the scorching sun, they did not hesitate to consume their energy and unleashed wave after wave of chilly thunderbolts, entangling Shi Tianma and preventing him from escaping. Shi Tianma, who had an extremely strong fleshly body, but was not an expert in divine abilities or magic, slowly descended from the sky. He knew some methods to control the wind, but these little tricks of the Xiantian realm couldn't let him fly around in the sky like these ghost immortals. While holding his son, who was coughing out blood due to the violent impact, he fell down from the sky. After that, a dozen or so thunders exploded behind him, sending him flying back to Shi Martial Club and landing heavily on the square of Shi Martial Club. 9 in origin sealing, imperial decree. In the void, 6 ghost immortals let out shrill cries. 9 grayish-white beams shot out from the top of each of their heads, looking as thin as a spider web. Together with an evil wind that blotted out the sky and blotted out the earth, they came pressing down from the sky and enveloped the entire Sher Marshall Club. 54 wisps of white mist weaved into a large net, which kept absorbing the energy gushing out from underground. Gradually, it transformed into a grayish-white light shield that hovered above Sher Marshall Club. A couple dozens of green runes, each several tens of feet in circumference, were faintly visible within the light shield. A bizarre aura that made one feel cold and powerless was rising slowly from underground, drilling into one's body through the soles of one's feet. Apart from the men brought here by Wu Qi, all the instructors and apprentices of Sher Marshall Club were shivering from head to toe and fell to the ground. The blood and qi on their faces faded away quickly, and soon their faces turned as pale as a dead man's. No matter it was the ordinary apprentices, the instructors of Peak Stage Hotian Realm, or the instructors of Xiantian Realm, none of them could survive under the light shield. Shi Tianma let out a furious roar. He hugged Shi Wugo tightly, swung his arm and thrust out his fist. In this punch, Shi Tianma had exerted all of his abilities. The innate energy in his body burst out along with ear-splitting noises. Abruptly, a clump of dark green light burst out from his right fist, transforming into a gigantic fist that measured several tens of feet in circumference, thrusting towards the grayish-white light shield. A muffled boom rang out as the green fist collided forcefully with the light shield. The fist exploded, and a small hole of a few feet in diameter was torn open on the light shield. Stomping his feet, Shi Tianma was about to bring his son and rush out through the small hole. However, Wu Qi had moved as well. He pointed his finger out, and a wolf howl soared into the sky. 7 dark wolf heads, each the size of a human head, leaped toward Shi Tianma while emanating an eerie cold air. There were 49 wolf heads on the sword of Greedy Wolf, and according to the number of great divination, it had endless magical functions. However, as Wu Qi dared not to expose his cultivation base of Jindan Realm, he could only control the sword of Greedy Wolf with the cultivation base of Meridian Cultivating Tier of Xiantian Realm, and could only produce the most basic 7 wolf heads. The sword beam moved at an incredible speed, as the 7 dark wolf heads, each dragging a 10 feet long dark tail behind them, bit fiercely on Shi Tianma's body. The wolf fangs bit down viciously, producing a large amount of sparks on Shi Tianma's body, and producing a loud noise that sounded like metal clashing. Upon hearing the noise, Wu Qi could not help but feel his teeth turning numb. How strong was his body, that it could cause the wolf heads transformed from the sword of Greedy Wolf to produce such a noise? However, a corporeal body was, after all, a corporeal body, and the sword of Greedy Wolf was a flying sort of lower-tier magical treasure level. The 7 wolf heads bit fiercely on Shi Tianma's body, and the razor-sharp wolf fangs sank deep into his body while leaving a large amount of sparks behind. The moon-swallowing Greedy Wolf Grand Formation of 9 Serenity's soul-devouring formation was activated. Several dozens of dark streams shot out from the wolf mouths, squeezing into Shi Tianma's body while producing jarring and strange howls, crazily extracting and devouring his enormous blood and energy essence. Sizzling noises lingered without an end as Shi Tianma's body, which had just sprung up from the ground, fell heavily to the ground once again. The 7 wolf heads attached to his body looked like 7 huge holes on a high-pressure airbag. As a result, the energy in Shi Tianma's body was completely depleted, and how could he still jump up? The dark airflow kept bringing out streams of dark green liquid, each as thick as a bowl, from Shi Tianma's body. The 7 wolf heads were howling joyfully, greedily digesting the dark green blood and energy essence, turning them into the power of the sword of Greedy Wolf. Shi Tianma let out a wild howl of pain. He stamped his foot fiercely, causing a large sheet of dark green flame to burst out from his body, pushing the 7 wolf heads away from his body. However, these 7 wolf heads were transformed from flying swords. Although they were pushed away by the flame, the razor-sharp wolf fangs still dragged and scratched on Shi Tianma's body, immediately ripping off a few pieces of blood and flesh the size of a bowl. With a flash of dark light, these pieces of blood and flesh were ripped to shreds, and the enormous energy essence contained in them was completely absorbed by the sword of Greedy Wolf, turning into a pile of ash that slowly fell to the ground. Then, 6 dark green thunderbolts, the size of a water tank, descended from the sky and hit on the top of Shi Tianma's head, who was howling in extreme pain. The thunderbolts refined by ghost immortals had a very low explosive noise, and the explosive force was not too strong. However, the vicious phosphorescent thunderbolts were specialized in damaging the nascent divinity and blood essence of the cultivators. Struck by the thunderbolts, Shi Tianma's body trembled immediately, and blood burst out from his 7 apertures. His innate energy was extremely strong, and his fleshly body was incredibly strong. However, as he cultivated with a very strange technique, the strength of his soul was only slightly weaker than a warrior of peak Hotian realm. Struck by the thunderbolts unleashed by a ghost immortal who had formed his ghost core, Shi Tianma threw his head back and let out a miserable howl. Large amounts of green blood burst out from his 7 apertures, and he fell to the ground immediately. Shi Wugo let out a shrill cry. He sprung up to his feet, grabbed Shi Tianma and carried him on his back, clenched his jaws tightly, and randomly picked a direction and sped away. He was still trying to find a way out of death, but suddenly he heard a loud clang. Princess Zhonglu had pulled out an iron stick from nowhere, dashed to his back and gave him a heavy smack. Shi Wugo rolled his eyes and fainted on the spot. Wu Qi turned his head over, and all the secret agents of scouting office and palace guards on the scene had turned their bodies as well. No one dared to look at the scene where the most honorable princess of Great Yan Dynasty gave someone a heavy smack from the back. Only Bai Zhuer and Bai Zuo were clapping and cheering with a silly and naive look. "Princess, what a clean smack." Hee. Although the Shi Wugo is very strong, he was still knocked down by Princess with just a single strike. Princess Zhonglu tilted her chin up. She was about to boast about herself with a complacent look on her face when she suddenly saw the strange expression on Wu Qi and the others' faces. Hastily, she threw the iron stick far away, put on a gentle, graceful and shy posture that made her look like a water lotus flower, and carefully walked behind Wu Qi. With a shy smile on her face, she lowered her head and stood still. A miserable howl was heard coming from a far distance. An unlucky disciple of Shi Martial Club was hit on the head by the iron stick thrown by Princess Zhonglu. His head was badly bruised and bleeding, and half of his teeth were knocked out. It was unknown whether it was because of fear or the severe pain, but this disciple of Shi Martial Club suddenly burst into loud sobs. Princess Zhongli's expression changed slightly. She stared at the disciple with a flustered and exasperated look, stamping her feet fiercely and shattering the floor tiles within a circumference of several tens of feet into powder. Wu Qi cleared his throat and ignored the little action of Princess Zhonglu. He took over the identity token handed over by the ghost immortal and began to carefully examine it. The color of the token was dark green, the favorite color of the nobles of Great Yan Dynasty. The token was engraved with patterns of wind and clouds, and underneath it was a vast ocean. Between the ocean and the sky, a few swallows could be seen flying. On the back of the token, a few characters were engraved with gold. Buji, Duke of Yanlu. Everyone looked carefully. The evidence is conclusive. This Shi Martial Club is closely related to the death of the previous Duke of Yanlu, Buji. Men, break Shi Tianma's shoulder blades, pierce through all 36 special acupoints in his body, and detain him. All the disciples and instructors of Shi Martial Club will have their cultivation base crippled, and be sent to the prison of West Wind Guard of Scouting Office. Each of the 5 Wind Guards of Great Yan Dynasty had their own prison in Ji City. Among them, the prison of Central Wind Guard was the largest, and the security was the strictest. But how could Wu Qi dare to throw these criminals into Qin Qingshui's territory? He could guarantee that once these people were sent to Central Wind Guard's prison, in less than 3 days, they would either be killed, or all the credit would be given to Qin Qingshui. So, why would he send benefits to his enemy? Currently, in Ji City, only the West Wind Guard that Lu Qingfeng and Wu Qi could rely on was the West Wind Guard under the rule of Yan Jiuhui. A large group of secret agents from West Wind Guard of Scouting Office had rushed over after hearing the news. Skillfully, they crippled the cultivation base of all the instructors and disciples of Shi Martial Club, then tied them up with specially made ropes and threw them into prison wagons that came rushing to the scene. With a total of 1,000 prisoners, they were sent to the prison of West Windgard. Wu Qi ordered the ghost immortal who sneaked into Sher Martial Club, broke into the secret chamber and found the token, to lead the way. Along the way, in a serious tone, Wu Qi told Princess Zhonglu and his entourage, "Everyone, listen carefully. I've taken a fancy to the foundation of Sher Martial Club, and with the help of Princess Zhongli's power, I want to annex Sher Martial Club and open my own martial club in Ji City. By accident, I found out that Sher Tianma was related to Yan Buji's death. Everyone, you have to find out the cause and effect of this." Princess Zhongli stared at Wu Qi with a puzzled expression. She had no idea why he was making such a solemn confession. However, she didn't get to the bottom of it and interrogate him in detail. Instead, she just displayed the dignified bearing of a princess and fiercely threatened all the people behind her. She swore in front of all these people that if anyone dared to not follow Wu Qi's order and dared to talk nonsense, she would definitely make all 9 generations of that person regret that they were born. With Princess Zhongli's tyrannical behavior, Wu Qi thought that perhaps this confession could be concealed from Lao Ai and Yan Xianxin for some time. But it was hard to say. Lao Ai, that peerless evil man, had been operating in Ji City for so many years. Who knew if he would discover something behind this? While he was pondering, they arrived at Sher Tianma's secret chamber. Chapter 125. Muffled footsteps were heard faintly coming from a far distance. It was the city guards of Ji City who were marching towards them. The battle between Sher Tianma and the 6 ghost immortals in the sky had long alerted all the relevant government offices in Ji City. Hundreds of sky patrolling eagle guards soared into the sky from all the scouting offices, bringing with them a dazzling blue gleam as they wheeled in the sky, sealing off the surrounding areas of mighty Martial Street. Wu Qi hastened his pace and came to the front door of the secret chamber, which was broken through by the 4 ghost immortals with brute force. This secret chamber of Sher Tianma was indeed well hidden. The entrance was located under a rockery in the backyard, in a deep well that went straight up into the sky. The depth of the well was over 1,000 feet, and the circumference of the well was less than 3 feet. Anyone with insufficient cultivation base would definitely be turned into a meat patty if they fell into it. The wall of the well was smooth, without any place that could be used as leverage. On top of that, there were several hundreds of bizarre runes engraved on it, emitting dazzling dark green, dark blue, and various other colors. According to the ghost immortals who broke through the restrictive spell, these runes contained a deadly poison, and any ordinary living beings would turn into pus and blood upon touching it. Fortunately, Wu Qi had let the 4 ghost immortals sneak into this place, as all the deadly poisons under the heaven had no effect on these ghost immortals, who had no corporeal bodies. The deep underground shaft was filled with a gloomy aura, which allowed the 4 ghost immortals to avoid the sunlight, allowing them to unleash a stronger overall strength. With a round of violent bombardment from the phosphorescent flame and Yin thunder, they easily broke through all the restrictive spells on the shaft and entered the deep well. It was because these ghost immortals were experts in passing through walls with their shapeless bodies, regardless of whether it was flowers, grass, soil, trees, rockery, or stone walls. They could just pass through everything. That was the reason why they could find this secret chamber in such a short period of time. If it were someone else, even the most seasoned investigator, it would not be so easy for them to find the entrance to the secret chamber in this rockery, which covered an area of over 1,000 feet in circumference. Before Wu Qi could enter the deep well, Princess Zhonglu was the first to impatiently jump into the well, taking the lead and rushing into the secret chamber. Very soon, a buzzing echo came from underground. "So many beautiful things, they are all mine, all mine. TK, this Sher Tianma seems to be quite wealthy. How could he have so many jewelry?" Then, Wu Qi jumped into the well and quickly walked through a nearly mile-long secret tunnel, coming to a secret chamber that measured several hundred feet in both width and length, and was filled with numerous sandalwood racks. Just as Princess Zhonglu, who was shouting and cheering excitedly, had said, There were countless treasures placed on the wooden shelves here. There were no common objects like gold or silver here, only corals, hawksbill turtles, pearls, jades, diamonds, rubies, sapphires, and other rare treasures. In the corner of the secret chamber, there were nearly 100 wooden boxes of various sizes, each of which contained a small hill of high-grade and top-grade spirit stones of various attributes. Wu Qi's eyes lit up. Among these upper-grade and even supreme-grade energy stones, all of them had 5 elements, and there were even a dozen of them which were extremely rare. They did not have any elemental properties, but contained the purest energy essence of the sun and moon. He swallowed a mouthful of saliva, then turned to Princess Zhonglu, who was holding a box of gemstones in her hand and laughing happily, and asked, "How are we going to divide these energy stones?" Princess Zhonglu threw a glance at the 100 feet wide pile of energy stones, shook her head and said, "What's the use? All these things in the secret chamber are going moldy. You can just take them all. If it is not enough, I'll send you more in 2 days." Wu Qi was rendered speechless. Suddenly, he realized that this young girl standing in front of him was the princess of Great Yen Dynasty. Although these energy stones were of high quality and great quantity, for the Great Yen Dynasty, which had a history of over 2,000 years, they were just a drop in the ocean. Princess Zhongli did not care about these energy stones, but Wu Qi treasured them very much. He quickly walked over, threw away all the wooden chests, and kept all the energy stones into his storage ring. 8 ghost immortals stood in a straight line at the entrance of the secret chamber, glaring fiercely at Zhao Chenzue, Meng Xiaobai, and the others behind them. It was obvious that they were not allowed to come in. With these 8 ghost immortals guarding the entrance, no one dared to break into the secret chamber. Wu Qi and Princess Zhongli had enough time to divide all the various treasures in the secret chamber. Wu Qi focused on all kinds of energy stones and some rare objects that contained natural energies, while Princess Zhonglu was beaming with joy. She reached out her hand to all the treasures that shone the brightest and had the most exquisite designs. There was a pale purple, half-transparent jade bracelet on both her left and right wrist, on which some runes could be vaguely seen blinking. They were 2 storage bracelets with a huge capacity. Princess Zhongli smilingly searched through the secret chamber and stuffed all the treasures that caught her eyes into the bracelets. While looting all the treasures in the secret chamber, Princess Zhongli gave a loud laugh and said, "I didn't expect that a mere Martial Club could have such a rich wealth. Wu Qi, now I understand why you came to Martial Club and stirred up troubles. Why don't I mobilize the army in my fief tomorrow and confiscate all the properties in Street of Mighty Martial?" They say, "Where did they find a peach of immortality carved out of such a huge piece of ruby?" With an enchanting smile on her face, Princess Zhongli picked up a peach of immortality from a wooden shelf. It was as big as a bull's head, glinting brilliantly and without any blemish. It was a peach of immortality carved out of an entire piece of ruby, and its value could not be measured with money. Apart from the peach itself, there was also a tray carved into the shape of a leaf at the bottom of the peach, which was also carved out of a huge piece of flawless jade. A couple dozens of thumb-sized, perfectly round and translucent silver pearls were rolling quickly on the leaf, looking no different from the dewdrops on the peach of immortality. Looking at the huge peach, a strange gleam flashed across Wu Qi's eyes. It contained a very strong fire element energy, and it was not just an ordinary ruby, as it could be considered as one of the most precious natural treasures. On the other hand, the jade carved into the shape of a leaf was emanating a faint aura of green wood. It was also a rare and precious item. The wood element was the source of fire, and that was the reason why the peach of immortality was glistening with a bright red glow, as if it was a living creature. On the other hand, the couple dozens of pearls were hovering on the leaf, faintly emanating a bone-piercingly cold energy essence. Surprisingly, the core of these pearls contained a thread of innate Kuei water energy essence. Not only did the energy essence nourish the leaf carved from the jade, making it look especially lustrous and translucent, it had also sealed the fire energy contained in the ruby, preventing it from spreading wantonly. Water element, wood element, fire element, white, green, and red energy intertwined with each other on the surface of this extraordinary treasure, transforming into a dense mist that enveloped the entire peach of immortality. What a treasure! I love it! Princess Zhongli narrowed her eyes, smiling so widely that the corners of her mouth and eyes curved into the shape of a crescent moon. On the other hand, Wu Qi could tell that this peach of immortality was not an ordinary decorative treasure, but a magical treasure that had gone through the preliminary refining. Only by going through the last few steps of refining, it would become a treasure that had fused the energy of water, wood, and fire elements, and could unleash innate water, wood thunder, and fire ray to injure the enemy. Judging from the overall strength Shi Tianma had shown, he did not have the ability to produce a treasure like this, and it seemed like his cultivation technique did not require any external items. All of a sudden, Yen Bugui's cautious voice was heard coming from the secret passage. Your Highness, I, Yen Bugui, have some impression of this peach of immortality. 3 months ago, Yen Qingchen, the Prince of Yi, celebrated his 600th birthday, and his youngest son, who was in Fef Tuanqiu, presented this peach of immortality to him. In Mount Jian, which is 3,000 miles away from Ji City, all the tributes were robbed by someone, and none of the 3,000 soldiers who escorted the tributes survived. This case is currently being investigated by Scouting Office. Princess Zhongli, who was having a complacent smile on her face, suddenly opened her eyes. She turned to look at Yen Bugui, who was peeking out from the secret passage, and said angrily, "What are you trying to say? This treasure belongs to me now. Since it was robbed by a thief, it is now an item without an owner. Now that I've snatched it back from the thief, it belongs to me. This is a matter of course. If anyone dares to talk nonsense, you can ask Yen Qingchen to come talk to me." Yen Bugui coughed dryly, then said carefully, "I just want to tell your highness that since this peach of immortality is found here, it is highly possible that Shi Tianma is the culprit who closed the case. Most probably, the other precious treasures in this secret chamber are also looted by him from all over the place. Your highness, please understand that the value of all the precious treasures in this secret chamber is priceless. No matter how big Shi Martial Club is, it is nothing but a martial club. How could it afford to buy so many rare and precious treasures?" Princess Zhongli narrowed her eyes, carefully stroking the peach of immortality in her arms. She nodded her head thoughtfully and said, "Is that so? All the precious treasures in here are stolen goods? Since we can't find the culprit, we might as well put them into the national treasury. Since they are in the national treasury, they are no different from my belongings. Therefore, it is reasonable for me to take them away now. If Minister of Justice Haoying Jingqi is not convinced, he can ask him to come talk to me." Hugging the rare peach of immortality tightly in her arms, Princess Zhongli kept praising it. Then, she conveniently shoved it into her bracelet. In terms of seniority, Prince Yen Qingchen was the nephew of Princess Zhongli. However, to Princess Zhongli, robbing the birthday tribute of her nephew was a matter of course, and there was nothing to be embarrassed about. As long as she had her eyes on something, it would be hers. As for the 8 governors, she could just ask them to step aside. Shaking his head, Wu Qi did not put the so-called robbery of tribute in his heart. Since Shi Tianma had the courage to kill Yen Buji, what was the big deal about robbing some tributes? Throwing away all the dazzling and glittering treasures, Wu Qi fixed his eyes on a pile of silvery white, translucent crystals on top of 2 wooden shelves at the innermost part of the secret chamber. They were shrouded in starlight and mist. He rubbed his eyes with a look of disbelief, strode to the pile of crystals. Seizing the opportunity when Princess Zhongli was not paying attention to him, Wu Qi waved his hand and shoved all over 200 silvery white crystals, ranging from the size of a human head to the size of a fist, into his storage ring. He placed them in the innermost layer of the ring, then wrapped them with a large pile of energy stones. Forcefully suppressing the excitement in his heart, Wu Qi turned to the other wooden shelves as if nothing had happened. From them, he took out some materials such as 10,000-year-old essence cold ice and shoved them into his storage ring. These materials were useless to ordinary people, and if they were carelessly touched by them, it would bring great harm to them. However, for cultivators, no matter it was crafting flying swords or unusual magical treasures, These materials were always useful. After a long while, Wu Qi finally calmed down his mind. In fact, those silvery white crystals were actually some kind of energy metal or that was contaminated by the aura emanated from the dimensional ripples. It was called spatial breaching spirit gold, and it had a structure similar to that of a metal and a crystal. It possessed a very unique power, and it was the core material used by cultivators to construct their Immortal's Cave and to construct a super long-distance minor universal teleportation formation. A minor universal teleportation formation, with spatial breaching spirit gold as its core, could teleport a person several tens or millions of miles away. The amount of energy consumed was negligible, and the ripples of energy emanated from it were very weak as well. As for a minor universal teleportation formation without spatial breaching spirit gold as its core, it would be just like what happened to Princess Ying Chuan, who had to empty the national treasury of the Lu Kingdom and consume all the high-grade energy stones in the treasury. Only then could he teleport her from the Lu Kingdom to Ji City. With over 200 pieces of spatial breaching spirit gold, if they were cut reasonably and used sparingly, it would be more than enough for Wu Qi to construct over 1,000 minor universal teleportation formations for a single person, or nearly 100 teleportation formations for 100 people. With these spatial breaching spirit gold, some of Wu Qi's ideas could be gradually put into practice. For example, he could construct a few Immortal's Cave in a secret place deep within Meng Mountains. A cunning rabbit has 3 burrows. This was a key point mentioned in the Scroll of Stealing. How could any qualified thief not have at least a few dozens of backup routes of retreat? These spatial breaching spirit gold were the biggest harvest for Wu Qi today. With them, Wu Qi would finally have the confidence to survive and develop in this world. Chapter 126. After looting all the treasures in Shi Tianma's secret chamber, under the persuasion of Wu Qi, Princess Zhonglu, whose eyes were flickering with a 5-colored gleam, finally left behind a few stolen goods for Wu Qi, asking him to pack them up and send them to scouting office as evidence of their crimes. Apart from these precious treasures, they also found some account books, documents, and some other things in the secret chamber. However, no matter it was Wu Qi or Princess Zhonglu, neither of them had any interest in them, and thus, all of them were taken away by the scouting office. Apart from the priceless treasures in the secret chamber, there were also a few warehouses in the backyard of Shi Martial Club, filled with gold ingots, silver ingots, and copper coins. After operating in Ji City for over 90 years, apart from the treasures obtained from robberies, Shi Martial Club had also earned quite a lot from its legitimate business. The total value of all the treasures found in these warehouses was at least 1 million. Wu Qi conveniently took out some gold ingots and silver ingots and put them into his storage ring, leaving the copper coins untouched. On the other hand, Princess Zhonglu had completely ignored these treasures. The reason why she looted all the treasures in the secret chamber was because she found them to be very beautiful. Wu Qi and Princess Zhonglu, who had their wealth increased dramatically, walked out from Shi Martial Club with a smile on their faces. They happened to see Shi Tianma squinting his pair of deep eyes, laughing at the secret agents of scouting office who were guarding him. His shoulder blades were broken, and all 36 important acupoints in his body were broken, causing all the innate energy in his body to be drained. Despite that, he still arrogantly threatened those secret agents of scouting office, saying that he would find out their relatives and kill all of them. Seeing Shi Tianma still being so arrogant despite having fallen into such a dire situation, Princess Zhonglu knitted her brows, pointed her finger at him and said, "How presumptuous! Somebody, pull out all his teeth and replace them with dog teeth. Apply some 9 jade bone healing ointment on them, and let him grow a mouthful of solid dog teeth. I'd like to see how this fellow, who barks like a wild dog, is going to show himself in front of others after he grows a mouthful of dog teeth." Wu Qi shuddered. Where did Princess Zhonglu learn these humiliating methods? Logically speaking, she, who was born deep in the palace, should not have come into contact with these things. The Jiuyu bone healing ointment was a secret medicine concocted by the imperial clan of Great Yan Dynasty. When one's limbs were broken, as long as the blood was still warm, the wound could be healed quickly by applying this ointment. Wu Qi pulled out Shi Tianma's teeth and gave him a mouthful of dog teeth. After that, he smeared the 9 jade bone healing ointment on them. With that, the dog teeth would fuse together with Shi Tianma's gums, and there would be absolutely no rejection. As the most renowned grandmaster in the Jianghu of Great Yan Dynasty, Shi Tianma was humiliated in such a way. If that were the case, he would never be able to face anyone again. Shi Tianma's face flickered between pale and green. He gave Princess Zhonglu a fierce glare, threw his head back and roared furiously, "Forget it! I've been a man who has run amok all my life. How can I be bullied by a woman like this? Forget it, forget it. My master will definitely avenge me. All of you, just you wait. Your 9 clans will all die." After letting out 3 wild roars, Shi Tianma turned to Shi Wugo, who was tied up in the same way, and said furiously, "My son, why don't you kill yourself now? Are you going to wait for them to humiliate you like this?" Shi Wugo gave his father a look, threw his head back and cried out wildly, "Master, please avenge me and my son." All of a sudden, loud noises of countless steel bars breaking were heard coming from Shi Wugo's body. Pale green blood burst out from his 7 apertures, and in just a blink of an eye, he had lost all signs of life. Shi Tianma let out a wild cry as loud noises of thunder were heard coming from his body. After that, dark green and sticky blood sprayed out from his 7 apertures. His body twitched violently for a while, and then he too committed suicide with a mystic technique. The secret agents of Scouting Office standing right next to both father and son did not have the time to react, and could only watch them die with their own eyes. There were even 2 secret agents of Scouting Office standing too close to Shi Tianma. The blood that sprayed out from his 7 apertures sprinkled onto their arms. Like a concentrated acid, it scorched and rotted their skin, emitting a pungent smell of grass and wood. Both secret agents shrieked miserably. Greatly shocked, Wu Qi sprung forward, pulled out the sword of Greedy Wolf and chopped off their arms. Before their arms could touch the ground, they were burned into ashes by the green-colored blood. Everyone on the scene gasped at the same time. How could Shi Tianma's blood be able to withstand such a deadly poison? Wu Qi's eyes flickered. He stretched out his hand and pressed on the nostrils and the veins on their necks. Shaking his head, he sighed and said, "Well, they are 2 good men. Don't disgrace their dead bodies. Xiaobai, bring them out of the city and bury them in a place with good feng shui." Wu Qi told Meng Xiaobai that he was going to find a place with good feng shui to bury them, but he actually transmitted his voice to Meng Xiaobai, asking him to bring the corpses out of the city and find a random place to dig a hole. After that, he would bring the corpses back and hide them in Duke Yan Li's mansion. Wu Qi especially reminded Meng Xiaobai to be extra careful when he entered the city, and not let anyone notice that he brought the dead bodies back. Meng Xiaobai's expression remained unchanged. He answered and beckoned to Zhao Qinzue. A group of over 100 guards from Duke Yan Li's mansion drove a large chariot, carrying the dead bodies of Shi Tianma and his son out of the city. No one from Scouting Office had any objection to Wu Qi's order. Since Shi Tianma and his son were dead, what was the point of keeping their dead bodies? Although the cultivation technique they were practicing was a little strange, since they were dead, they couldn't interrogate them to find out the cultivation technique they were practicing. So, what was the point of keeping their dead bodies and stewing them? Only Wu Qi was sneering in his mind. Shi Tianma and his son had committed suicide because they were unwilling to be humiliated. They might have fooled the others, but not Wu Qi. In the scroll of stealing, there were over 100 different cultivation techniques of pretending to be dead, and each of them was 1,000,000 times more advanced than the evil cultivation technique used by Shi Tianma and his son. This was the meaning of Lord Guan Yu's sword dance in front of the temple. Since both father and son wanted to pretend to be dead, Wu Qi would fulfill their wish, bringing them into Duke Yan Li's mansion so that he could give them a good treatment. Upon thinking of the enormous blood and energy essence contained in the bodies of Shi Tianma and his son, Wu Qi couldn't help but drool. In order to win the trust of others and prove that they were really dead, this father and son had actually used a mystic technique to shatter their meridians, nearly wiping out all the life force in their bodies, leaving only a tiny bit of life force in their hearts. If no one came to rescue them within 72 hours, they would be dead for sure. During these 72 hours, they were really dead men, and there was no need to worry about any unforeseen events happening to them. Looking at Meng Xiaobai and the others who were leaving, Wu Qi pursed his lips into a smile. After that, he cupped his fist toward Princess Zhonglu in a solemn manner. Zidan, I'm sure you've heard about what happened in Sher Martial Club. With a serious expression, Wu Qi told Princess Zhonglu, I never expected that Sher Martial Club is actually a den of bandits who hide all the filthy things. Although the main culprit has committed suicide, there are still so many accomplices, and we still have a lot of things to do. I need to inform our young master about the assassination of Yen Buji, but we can't leave this place unattended. What if someone cheated and released the suspect without permission? Wouldn't all our efforts be in vain? Gently, Wu Qi tucked back a strand of hair that fell before Princess Zhongli's forehead, chuckled and said, You stay here and keep watch. Ask the men from Criminal and Justice Court and Scouting Office to investigate this case thoroughly. You must urge them to investigate this case with all their heart and soul, and find out if there are any other crimes committed by Sher Martial Club. Hearing that Wu Qi wanted her to stay here and keep watch, Princess Zhongli's heart was filled with reluctance. She pulled Wu Qi's sleeve and murmured in a low voice, Wherever you go, I'll follow you. I'll leave Bai Zhuer and Bai Zuer here. With them here, who would dare to mess around? Wu Qi smiled, then he moved closer to Princess Zhongli's ear and whispered, Not only do I need to supervise Criminal and Justice Court and Scouting Office in handling this case, I also need Zidan to help me occupy such a large courtyard in this Sher Martial Club. I'm planning to open a martial club here. Without Zidan's help, no matter what, I will never be able to own this courtyard in this golden section of the road. Sighing lightly, Wu Qi stared deeply into Princess Zhongli's eyes and said, Wu Qi has no relatives in this world. Apart from Zidan, no one can help Wu Qi handle this matter. Princess Zhongli's spirit was immediately lifted. She stuck out her chest, tilted her chin up complacently and said, So, you're the one who wants this martial club? Don't worry, Zidan will handle it properly for you. Who dares to fight me for something that I've taken a fancy to? As for this Sher Martial Club, it will definitely belong to the Imperial Treasury. Everything in the Imperial Treasury is my property, and everything that belongs to me is yours. Wu Qi narrowed his eyes and smiled, gently stroking Princess Zhongli's hair. Yen Bugui and the others were staring blankly into the sky. Everything in Great Yen Dynasty's Imperial Treasury was equal to Wu Qi's property? Were they hallucinating? Although Princess Zhonglu had the courage to say something like that, none of them had the courage to listen to it. They had no idea how Yen Dan would feel when he heard what his most precious granddaughter had said. What kind of thoughts would he have? The complacent Princess Zhonglu simply carried a large chair and sat in the main hall of Sher Martial Club, giving orders to all the officers from Criminal and Justice Court, patrolling officers, and captains of City Defense Army who came to Sher Martial Club. With this mighty deity in charge, the Judicial Department and the Force Department in G City began to operate at an unprecedented efficiency. Very soon, according to the account books and other items found in Sher Tianma's secret chamber, they had determined that Sher Martial Club was related to many robberies that happened in the area 10,000 miles around G City in the recent decades. G City was the absolute political and economic core of Great Yen Dynasty, and all the rare and precious treasures under the heaven were gathered here. Those merchant caravans and tribute teams from various vassal kingdoms of Great Yen Dynasty would bring an astronomical amount of treasures. Sher Martial Club had been robbing for several dozens of years, and the treasures they obtained were far more than what was found in the secret chamber. Including the treasures that Wu Qi and Princess Zhonglu had embezzled, they only accounted for less than 1% of the total looted over the years. According to the numerous account books and documents found in the secret chamber, the mood of the officers from Criminal and Justice Court was getting more and more excited, and the atmosphere was getting tenser and tenser. The crimes committed by Sher Martial Club were far more than what they were. From the records in those account books, one could vaguely tell that there was a deeper conspiracy behind Sher Martial Club. For example, there was a pale golden account book on which a large number of names and numbers were recorded. If they were not mistaken, this was the record of Shi Tianma bribing some officials, and it could also be the record of the merchants who helped Shi Martial Club sell the stolen goods, helping them dispose of the stolen goods. More and more elite officers from Criminal and Justice Court arrived at this place, and the elite investigators from Central Wind Guard of Scouting Office were like flies that had smelled the scent of blood. Over 30% of the patrolling officers and secret agents in G City of Great Yan Dynasty had cordoned off the entire mighty Marshall Street, while an army of several tens of thousands of elite soldiers had completely sealed off all the streets on the left side of the street. Even the city gates on all four sides of the city wall had been shut. The captured apprentices of Shi Martial Club were quickly brought away, including the personal guard of Wei Xiaoxiao, who was personally captured by Wu Qi. As it was ordered by Wu Qi, the security around this personal guard and a few of his attendants was extremely tight. While everything was being carried out in an orderly manner, several dozens of burly men, who were clad in the official uniform of Criminal and Justice Court and the standard soft armor of Scouting Office, suddenly struck at the same time. They drew out their weapons and hacked towards those apprentices who were being escorted, then casually chopped off their heads. It was unknown what kind of drug was applied to the weapons used by these men. After chopping off their heads, the skulls quickly burst into flames and turned into ashes in just a blink of an eye. It happened so suddenly that none of the patrolling officers and secret agents on the scene could react in time. Even the personal guard and attendant of Wei Xiaoxiao who were captured by Wu Qi had their heads chopped off by someone. Sparks burst out in all directions, and their heads were quickly burned into ashes. Chapter 127. It all happened too suddenly. After those capable men, who were clad in official outfits, casually swung their blades and killed several dozens of disciples and instructors, they began to attack anyone in their line of sight. No one had expected that the men from Criminal and Justice Court and Scouting Office would suddenly do something like this. In just a few seconds, over 300 patrolmen and secret agents of Criminal and Justice Court had died under the blades. When the surrounding people finally reacted, the beast warriors of Scouting Office let out long and furious roars, transforming into the shadows of beast souls behind their backs and leaping forward, but these men, with their faces expressionless, raised their blades and chopped at their own necks. A couple dozens of streams of blood sprayed out, as they had actually chopped off their own heads. Countless patrolmen and secret agents in the surroundings could not help but gasp at the same time. Not only were they ruthless to others, they were also extremely ruthless to themselves. Men of sacrifice, no doubt about it. Who was the person who could cultivate such men of sacrifice? What was even more frightening was that these men of sacrifice had already blended into the judicial system of Great Yan Dynasty. Who was the person who could have such a heaven-defying method to plant so many men of sacrifice in Criminal and Justice Court and Scouting Office? All the disciples and instructors of the Martial Club who were killed by them had their heads burned into ashes, and no one could identify their faces and origins. It was obvious that they were trying to silence all the witnesses. But who could be so efficient as to give the order to silence all the witnesses right after Shi Martial Club was raided? Perhaps he had lost his mind, as an official from Criminal and Justice Court suddenly cried out in a loud voice, "Protect Her Highness! Protect Princess Zhang Lu!" Just as the official who was eager to show his loyalty let out a loud cry, Princess Zhang Lu gave him a slap on the face and knocked him several hundred feet away. He coughed out a mouthful of blood and fainted on the spot. Disgustedly, Princess Zhang Lu gazed at the unlucky official, clenched her teeth and said in a cold voice, "Do I need to be protected by a bunch of useless fools? Good, very good. Criminal and Justice Court and Scouting Office, I can't believe there is someone among you who is colluding with the bandits. Inform Haoying Jingqi and Qin Qingshui, and ask them to apologize to my imperial grandfather." She stomped her feet and glanced at the head and half-body of Wei Xiaoxiao's guard who was captured by Wu Qi. With a frown, Princess Zhang Lu said, "Send someone to inform Vice Premier Gao Jianli that the people from Criminal and Justice Court and Scouting Office are no longer reliable. Send the men of Swallow here, and everyone here, Investigate the bloodline of 6 generations and all the interpersonal relationships. Everyone listen to this empress. Keep a close eye on the colleagues around you. Whoever dares to wander around will be killed without mercy. If there are any mistakes, blame the 3 clans. Many of the officials present responded loudly, but their faces were as pale as snowflakes. Gao Jianli was in charge of the Swallow, a secret spy organization that was independent of all the government offices in Great Yan Dynasty. For so many years, no one knew what this Swallow had done, but everyone knew of its fearsome reputation. When Princess Zhang Li sent someone to inform Gao Jianli, asking him to take over the management of this place, the incident had really blown up. In just the time to finish a pot of tea, Qin Qingshui arrived with a large group of secret agents. His pale donkey face was filled with an unconcealable panic. With the quickest speed he could muster, he came before Princess Zhang Lu and cried out sternly, "Your Highness Zhang Lu, just let me investigate this thoroughly. Why bother Vice Premier Gao Jianli?" Princess Zhang Lu gazed at Qin Qingshui from the corner of her eyes, then shook her head disdainfully. Qin Qingshui's face turned ashen, as if all his spirit, energy, and spirit were sucked out in an instant. He nearly fell to the ground. With Gao Jianli intervening and the Swallow taking over the investigation, wouldn't the Central Wind Guard of Scouting Office be thoroughly investigated? Oh heaven, during the years when Qin Qingshui was in charge of the Central Wind Guard, he had done too many shameful things, and it was too late for him to cover them up now. When these men of sacrifice attacked to silence the witness, Wu Qi had already arrived at Zhuguijing Mansion and came straight to the main hall. The emissary of the Gao Ling Kingdom was being pressed to the ground by a group of ferocious servants of Zhuguijing Mansion, who were using an iron wooden stick as thick as a bowl to slap his buttocks. A low-ranking official was standing beside him and counting. Meanwhile, a few middle-ranking officials of Zhuguijing Mansion were standing at the side, loudly reproaching the emissary of the Gao Ling Kingdom for his crimes. From disrespecting the suzerain kingdom to shouting in the court, there were at least 17 to 18 crimes. Each crime was punished with 30 strokes of the stick. With over 500 strokes of the stick, perhaps this emissary of the Gao Ling Kingdom would be beaten to death. A group of guards with swords drawn were standing guard outside the main hall, surrounding the emissary and his personal guards, not allowing them to move. The people of the Gao Ling Kingdom were looking at the emissary being punished with a pale face, panicking and not knowing what to do. Wu Qi gave these people a cold glance, then strode into the main hall. The law of the jungle was the law of the jungle, and it was even more so between kingdoms. In the main hall, Lu Chengfeng, the emissary of the Lishan Kingdom, and Princess Yingchuan were laughing together. The cooperation agreement between the 3 parties had been reached. Wu Qi directly picked up the agreement before Lu Chengfeng. The general idea of the agreement was as follows. The Lu Kingdom and the Lishan Kingdom would join forces and attack the Gao Ling Kingdom, seize the control of the gold mine, and inflict as much damage as possible to the Gao Ling Kingdom's national strength. It would be the best if they could wipe out the main force of the Gao Ling Kingdom's army. After conquering at least 8 counties of the Gao Ling Kingdom, the conquered territory, together with a part of the Lu Kingdom's territory, would become the territory of Tai clan, Mark Yuanyang of the Lu Kingdom. After Mark Yuanyang established his own kingdom, Lu Chengfeng would officially put it on record in Zhuguijing Mansion. After Tai clan established his kingdom, he would be on friendly terms with the Lu Kingdom and the Lishan Kingdom for generations to come. Once Tai clan's kingdom was stabilized, the 3 kingdoms would join forces and divide the remaining territory of the Gao Ling Kingdom. These were the general terms of the agreement. There were nearly 100 other detailed rules, detailing the obligations and responsibilities that all 3 parties would have to bear when they joined forces to conquer the Gao Ling Kingdom, as well as the share of profits that they would enjoy in the end. Through a small communication formation constructed in Zhuguijing Mansion, the Lu Kingdom, the Lishan Kingdom, and Tai clan, the 3 parties must have already begun to mobilize their armies and contact each other. Perhaps the emissary of the Gao Ling Kingdom had noticed something was not right, and thus he immediately quarreled with Lu Chengfeng in the court, which gave Lu Chengfeng the chance to stir up some trouble, and was ordered to give him a severe beating. With such a brutal beating, it would be a piece of cake for the emissary of the Gao Ling kingdom to remain unconscious, and it would not be surprising for him to be beaten to death. By the time he used the secret communication channel of the Gao Ling kingdom to send the news back to his kingdom, perhaps the armies of all three parties would have long arrived at the Gao Ling kingdom. Princess Ying Chuan was in a very good mood. She looked at Lu Chengfeng with a smile on her face, and was thinking whether her charm was too strong, which was the reason why Lu Chengfeng could come up with such a suggestion right before she paid him a visit. The three parties had joined forces and dismembered the Gao Ling kingdom, the mortal enemy of the Lu kingdom. Not only could they dismember it, they could also seize a large piece of land, and even have a share of the precious mineral vein. This was much better than the plan she had when she came to the Gao Ling kingdom. After giving a peach in return, Princess Ying Chuan happily pondered over the terms and conditions of the alliance between the three parties. Smilingly, she gave Lu Chengfeng a wink and said, "Duke Yenlu, Ying Chuan has something important to report to Duke Yenlu. It is related to your biological father, Duke Buji." The emissary of the Lishan kingdom had a pair of sharp eyes. Upon seeing Princess Ying Chuan's bashful expression, he rose hastily and bid his farewell. The relationship between the Lu kingdom and Tai clan was very close to the Lishan kingdom, so naturally, they knew it very well. Since Princess Ying Chuan had brought up the matter related to Yen Buji, it was obvious that she wanted to use this matter to ease the conflict between the Lu kingdom and Tai clan. If the emissary were to stay here any longer, it would be a little inconsiderate. Lu Chengfeng personally sent the emissary off from Zhuguijing mansion, only then did he return to the main hall. He turned to look at Princess Ying Chuan with a smile and said, "I wonder what's the matter, Princess? It is related to my father. Don't tell me that Lu Suifeng is also the son of my father and princess?" At this moment, Lu Chengfeng made fun of Princess Ying Chuan. Princess Ying Chuan blushed, winked at Lu Chengfeng coquettishly, smiled and said, "What are you talking about? How could Duke Buji fall in love with a girl like Ying Chuan?" Princess Ying Chuan straightened her face, then said with a solemn expression, "Ying Chuan has to apologize to Duke Yenlu first. My son Suifeng has offended Duke Yenlu with his rude behavior. I hope you can forgive him." Lu Chengfeng waved his hand indifferently and said, "Never mind, I've already forgotten all those things. Princess, you don't have to wonder why I would come to an agreement with you today. It's just that the Gao Ling kingdom has a rather strong national strength among all the vassal kingdoms in the west. How could Tai clan possibly swallow such a big piece of fat meat? There is no grudge between Princess and me. Naturally, I understand what is the most beneficial choice I have to make." Princess Ying Chuan was taken aback, then she quickly said, "But, Ying Chuan, the matter here is..." Wu Qi interrupted Princess Ying Chuan. Wu Qi had already told Lu Chengfeng everything about what Lao Ai told her. Both of them were unwilling to waste their breath on this matter. If they really heard Princess Ying Chuan telling Lu Chengfeng that Sher Martial Club was the one who carried out the assassination of Yen Buji, then they would owe him a favor for no reason. So why bother? Casually throwing out Yen Buji's token, Wu Qi said with a stern voice, "Young master, today, Wu Qi went to the martial club that we had our eyes on last time to challenge it, planning to seize its foundation and open a martial club in Ji City for young masters' use. In the end, I found this token in the secret chamber of Sher Martial Club. Sher Martial Club should be the culprit behind the assassination of Duke Buji." Lu Chengfeng turned pale with fright and leaped to his feet. "What? Sher Martial Club is just a common martial club. How could they have such audacity?" Princess Ying Chuan turned pale with fright as well. She cried out with a sharp voice, "What? Why did you do that to Sher Martial Club? You? How did you?" Looking at the token thrown out by Wu Qi and engraved with the words Duke Yen Buji, Princess Ying Chuan was struck dumb and couldn't say a word. Didn't the sect leader of Great Sun Sect, Lao Ai, in her mind, tell her that not even the scouting office had discovered the shady dealings of Sher Martial Club? In Ji City, was it only Lao Ai who had vaguely realized that Sher Martial Club was not as simple as it seemed? How could this opportunity to repair the relationship between the Lu Kingdom and Tai clan slip away from her hands just like that? Had Wu Qi really done something to Sher Martial Club? And he even found out the evidence of Sher Martial Club assassinating Yen Buji? Princess Ying Chuan felt a buzzing noise ringing in her head. What Wu Qi and Lu Chengfeng had done was like a stick that had knocked on her head, making her feel dizzy and had no idea where she was for a long time. Intentionally, Wu Qi did not look at Princess Ying Chuan, whose face had turned pale. He just repeated everything that happened today to Lu Chengfeng. According to his description, he and Lu Chengfeng had already had the ambition to attack Sher Martial Club half a month ago, and it was only today that they borrowed the power of Princess Zhang Lu and attacked Sher Martial Club. While both men were playing the same trick, Princess Ying Chuan's beautiful face turned gloomy, and she did not know what she was feeling in her heart. It was such a good opportunity to make friends with Lu Chengfeng. How could it slip away just like that? They had already caught the culprit, yet she still told them that Shi Tianma was the one who assassinated Yen Buji. What was the point of telling them this? Right at this moment, a troop of soldiers, clad in black iron armor and shrouded in a cold aura and expressionless faces, rushed into the hall. The captain who led the troop gave the hall a glance, then cried out in a deep voice, "Where is Marketunyon Wu Qi? Chief General Jing Ku summons you." Chapter 128. 500 miles north of Ji City, there was a dense forest that measured several hundred miles in circumference. This forest had been growing for several thousand years, and giant trees that were over 1,000 feet tall could be found everywhere. Wisterias grew luxuriantly in the forest, and countless exotic flowers and grasses could be seen growing in it. There were even a few excellent quality energy veins running underneath the ground. Usually, the forest would be shrouded in white mist, with white cranes and green sparrows flying back and forth in the sky. Snakes and dragons would appear and disappear from time to time. According to the common people in Ji City, there were immortals living in this forest. No matter what kind of rumors were spread by the common people, it was a fact that this forest was a forbidden land controlled by the army of Great Yen Dynasty. Under the lead of the group of armored soldiers, Wu Qi sprinted at top speed for nearly 10 minutes. Relying on the extremely fast speed of his mount, he finally arrived at the edge of this nameless forest. Upon approaching the woods, Wu Qi felt uneasy all over his body. The combat instinct inherited from Wu Wang told Wu Qi that there were people hiding in every corner of this place. They and their group had been locked down by at least a couple dozens of large machines, and there were at least 300 pairs of eyes locked onto them. The defense was extremely tight, even tighter than the defense of the imperial palace of Great Yen Dynasty. Wu Qi glanced to the left and right. He could vaguely sense a few small mounds on both sides of the road, which seemed to be the hidden firing points. Apart from that, he couldn't find anything strange. The captain raised a pale green token high up in the air and injected his inner force into it. Immediately, a clear and melodious cry of swallows soared into the sky. A few whistles were heard coming from a distance. The captain gave out an order, and the group of soldiers continued riding along the road into the dense forest. At the same time, the gaze that he sensed had also disappeared without a trace. The road in the dense forest was only about 20 feet wide. Both sides of the road were surrounded by giant trees and long grasses. From time to time, a large group of monkeys would jump from one side of the road to the other side of the road, chirping noisily while throwing a few fruit cores to Wu Qi and his company. A large flock of birds were gliding across the sky gracefully, and large sheets of bird droppings were falling down like raindrops, staining everyone's face and head. Fortunately, Wu Qi was protected by his innate energy. The bird droppings were deflected away when they were still a few feet away from him. However, they caused the soldiers around him to have dozens more bird droppings on them. After walking along the main road for a dozen miles, two fierce tigers rubbed their bodies against each other. Then they came out from the bushes with two cubs that were obviously still drinking milk. They lazily lay down on the main road and basked in the sun. The group had no choice but to walk down the main road and detour around the family of four through the forest at the side before continuing on the main road. In the end, they hadn't even walked a few miles when a group of wild boars ran across the road with sharp cries of joy. Smoke and dust billowed, and they were immediately delayed again. Finally, this group of huge wild boars crossed the main road and walked for about 20 miles. Then, 7 or 8 huge pythons, which were as thick as water buckets, covered with white scales, had a horn on their heads, and claws could be vaguely seen under their abdomens, blocked their way, and were about to transform into flood dragons. These huge pythons were curled up lazily on the main road. The sun shone down through the branches that had been cut above the main road, making them feel very comfortable. They kept sticking out their long tongues. This time, even Wu Qi couldn't help but be shocked. The fierce tigers and wild boars were just ordinary wild beasts, but their bodies were especially strong, and the blood and qi in their bodies were more than 10 times stronger than their kind on Earth. However, they were just wild beasts. These 7 or 8 huge pythons were about to transform into flood dragons, and there was a faint pressure coming from them that made Wu Qi's heart tremble with fear. They had already formed the Jin Dan in their bodies. If their bloodline was a little lower, they would be able to transform into human forms, just like the Xiong brothers. However, these pythons were huge in size, and their bloodline was that of flood dragons. Therefore, it was much more difficult for them to transform into human forms than the Xiong brothers. According to Wu Qi's estimation, unless they survived the Thunder Tribulation and transformed into flood dragons, then cultivated to the nascent soul realm and molted at least 2 times, these pythons would be able to transform into human forms. But even now, their strength was much stronger than that of ordinary Jin Dan human immortals. These pythons coiled up on the main road, staring at Wu Qi and the others with their intelligent eyes. There was actually a hint of unruly and cunning in their eyes. They put on a posture that said Lao Tzu would not give way, stretched their bodies lazily, and stuck out their tongues proudly at Wu Qi and the others. Without a choice, Wu Qi and the others could not afford to offend this group of big bosses. They could only lead their mounts down the main road and take a detour to pass through this section of the main road. As they continued forward, Wu Qi's horizons were broadened. He saw many strange beasts and demons. In particular, there was an old turtle with a shell of over 30 feet in circumference. It had also formed a Yao core and had gained sentience and intelligence. However, it foolishly mistook itself for a monkey. It shook its shell and chased a group of monkeys climbing up and down a tree. The funny scene made Wu Qi speechless, while the armored soldiers who accompanied them were laughing in a deep voice. The captain turned his head and whispered to Wu Qi, "This old turtle is Old Mister's favorite pet. He has been following Old Mister since the founding of Great Yen Dynasty. But his brain was damaged when he was transcending the Thunder Tribulation. Therefore, his behavior is a little absurd. You will get used to it." "This turtle is Old Mister's pet? Who is Old Mister?" asked Wu Qi hastily. The captain answered naturally, "Oh, he is Old Mister Mod, the founding patriarch of Mo sect. His Majesty, Chief General, and Deputy Prime Minister have all acknowledged him as their master. Therefore, we all address him as Old Mister. Old Mister likes nature. In this Mo forest, apart from this main road, no one is allowed to touch even a single blade of grass or tree. Therefore, the vegetation here is rich and beautiful, and there are many animals here. Just the number of demon immortals in Mo sect alone is at least several hundred." He pointed at the road where they came from, smiled bitterly and said, "Those few big bugs that blocked our way just now are the inner sect disciples of Mo sect. They are extremely spoiled by Old Mister, and they love to play with us. We can't afford to offend them, so we can only let them do whatever they want. Fortunately, Mo sect has a strict rule. Apart from playing with us, they have not done anything evil. Don't be fooled by their ferocious appearance, as they are actually herbivores." "Herbivores?" Wu Qi shook his head. Then he suddenly realized what he had just heard. Mod, the founding patriarch of Mo sect. But Wu Qi was puzzled. According to the records in the books that Lu Xiaobai had read, Mod should not have any relationship with Great Yen Dynasty. Why was he here in Great Yen Dynasty? And he was the teacher of Yen Dan, Jing Ku, and a few other people? Very soon, Wu Qi threw this question to the back of his mind. He had yet to figure out why Yen Dan, Jing Ku, and a few other people would appear in this world, so why would he care about the reason why Old Mr. Mod came here? Perhaps he had taken a liking to Yen Dan and Jingku, and that was the reason why he built Mo sect here. Along the way, figures of men gradually appeared on both sides of the main road. They were men clad in coarse linen clothes, their hair disheveled, and their feet bare. They were carrying iron axes and baskets, harvesting all kinds of mushrooms and wild vegetables in the woods, chopping down those dead trees and bundling them into bundles of firewood. Their clothes were simple and crude, and their bodies were skinny. But their faces were rosy, and an indescribable joyful expression could be seen on their faces. They were walking through the woods, yet it was as if they had blended into one with the woods. When they breathed, the woods breathed, and when they laughed, the woods laughed. Every single move they made was following the trajectory of some heaven and earth. The aura of nature made Wu Qi's heart skip a beat. These men had different cultivation bases. The weakest one was an ordinary mortal, without any internal energy, while the strongest one was at the level of respiration tier of Xiantian realm. However, regardless of their cultivation base, they had blended into the woods naturally. This was something that even Wu Qi, who had formed 2 Jin Dan in his water meridian, could not achieve. It sounded simple to say that one had to harmonize with nature, but one would know how difficult it was to actually do it. At least, when Wu Qi met Nye Baihong and the other human immortals of Jin Dan realm, they were shrouded in surging strange signs, which made them completely incompatible with the nature. They were constantly being pushed and suppressed by the nature, so how could they ever harmonize with the nature? However, these men with low cultivation base had easily achieved this. When they saw Wu Qi and his company passing by, these men, who came to the roadside with bundles of firewood, greeted them with a smile on their faces. One after another, the iron-armored soldiers cupped their fists and returned the greeting, not daring to show any arrogance. The captain said in a low voice, "They are the disciples of Mo sect. Don't be fooled by the fact that some of them have low cultivation base, as their abilities are not limited to martial strength. Any one of them who walks out from the Mo forest possesses the ability to increase the overall strength of an army by a few times. In fact, the few strongest armies of Great Yen Dynasty have their disciples from Mo sect providing them with advice and strategies." Wu Qi nodded his head silently. This was what they meant by organization. Not only did old Mr. Mod know how to love with impartiality and not attack, he was also a famous educator and strategist. They walked along the main road for a long distance, and when the sun was setting in the west and the bright red sunlight shone upon the Mo forest, Wu Qi finally came to a clearing in the heart of the Mo forest. Upon arriving at this place, Wu Qi took a deep breath and stared blankly at an incredible building in front of him. The clearing in the forest was about 100 miles in circumference, and it included a few hills, a few small rivers, and a small lake. Between the hills, rivers, and lakes, a large number of villages constructed from logs were scattered in a picturesque manner. Every single house fit perfectly with the surrounding environment, without any sense of awkwardness or awkwardness. Many disciples of Mo sect, clad in shabby clothes, were carrying out the last work of the day. Some had just walked out from the fields, some were climbing out from the river with baskets of fish in their hands, and some were carrying all kinds of tools, happily walking out from the surrounding woods. Amidst this natural and harmonious village, a purple flame pillar, several tens of feet in diameter, shot straight up into the sky from the ground. Hovering 1,000 feet above the ground, this earth core flame pillar, which contained an endless and frightening heat, was holding up a steel city measuring several miles in circumference. On the smooth surface of the city, which was purely constructed from steel, countless huge runes could be vaguely seen, glinting with the same gleam as the purple flame pillar. This is... Wu Qi was struck dumb. The city was not big, measuring several miles in circumference. In this world, it could only be considered as the smallest city, the size of a sesame seed or a mung bean. But as this city, measuring several miles in circumference, was entirely constructed from steel, the workload was simply too great. It was not a big deal if it was constructed from steel, as with the national strength of Great Yen Dynasty, it was a piece of cake to construct a city like this. but for it to hover 1,000 feet above the ground. According to the inheritance in Scroll of Stealing, only an immortal of at least Heaven Immortal realm could achieve this. Could it be that there was a Heaven Immortal in Mo sect? Tilting his head up and staring blankly at the city, Wu Qi let his mount bring him towards the direction of the city. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.